Welcome to Picture This. Chad is crying. He is,
It's so beautiful.
that's cute, doesn't it? Especially at the end there with Chadwick Boseman. Speaking of Chadwick Boseman, we're talking about 2020. Big Oscars just happened. It'll be remembered for some things, which we'll get to in a sec. But if you are new to the show, first of all, welcome to Picture This. We are talking about 2020, as I said. I will say from the very top, just for no confusion, 2020, movies of 2020. This is the Oscars of 2021, but because all the movies came out in 2020, save for one, we will call it the 2020 Picture This episode. So first off, I want to introduce my co-host, the one and only Mr. Chadwick Webb. How are you, Chad?
Doing pretty well. I'm excited to talk about 2020, even though it wasn't that great of a year for a lot of people. It was a pretty good year for movies. So
yeah, I think a lot of people like to knock it because there were no big blockbusters. You got like a few in the beginning of the year before the pandemic. You got Onward and Invisible Man, and then the pandemic came and we didn't get much. We got Tenet, Wonder Woman, and that's about it. But I think it was kind of great to see some of the smaller movies get more attention because I will go through these movies, but I don't think all these movies would have been nominated in a given normal year, just because a lot of it is not the typical Oscar bait, as we like to say. So we're going to really quickly explain how we do the show. So we are going to take you through the history of 2020. Chad will tell us all about the history, and then we're going to talk about the Oscar ceremony itself. It just happened, so it's fresh on the brain. We're going to break down each movie individually, starting alphabetically with The Father, ending with Trial of Chicago 7, all 8 of them individually, alphabetically. Then at the end, we'll use our separate rankings. We'll share our separate rankings, and then we'll find the highest commonality between the two of us to crown our Best Picture winner out of these 8. And then we will pick one actor and one actress from these 8 movies, just these 8 movies. So none of the other movies that were nominated, although there are notable performances, of course, which we will get to when we talk about the ceremony itself. And after that, we'll tease next month's year of movies. How's that sound, Chad?
Sounds great.
Yeah. So Chad, why don't you let's dive right into the year of 2020. It's pretty fresh if you're listening to this when it airs. But if you're listening to this down the road, see what I did there? If you're listening to it down the road and you're reflecting back on this year of 2020, Chad is going to paint you a semi-beautiful picture of what 2020 is and was.
Yeah, so like Dyl said, 2020 is very recent in our memory. We experienced the coronavirus pandemic where we had to quarantine and lock down people and businesses alike worldwide, creating the biggest recession since the Great Depression in the 1930s. Despite that, 2020 was declared the International Year of Plant Health by the United Nations and Year of the Nurse and Midwife by the World Health Organization.
Cool.
A United States drone strike at Baghdad International Airport kills Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. Iran launches ballistic missiles at 2 Iraqi military bases hosting U.S. soldiers. I think there was a lot of conflict between the two countries. The Taal volcano in the Philippines has its first major eruption since 1977. That's when Star Wars came out. The first impeachment trial of Donald Trump begins in the United States Senate, and he is acquitted, even though he was impeached by the House. The Chinese city of Wuhan, the epicenter of the initial COVID-19 outbreak, is quarantined on January 23rd. Donald Trump signs the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement set to replace NAFTA. On January 30th, the WHO declares the outbreak a public health emergency of international concern. The United Kingdom and Gibraltar formally withdrew from the EU. Due to the pandemic, the stock market crashed on February 27th. A conditional peace agreement is signed between the United States and the Taliban. On March 9th, Italy becomes the first country to implement a nationwide quarantine in response to the pandemic. On March 11th, the WHO declares COVID-19 a pandemic. And on March 12th, my birthday, the global stock market crashed.
Oh, man.
Great birthday.
That's a date that sticks with me. The last show I was doing at college, our closing night was March 12th, and that was the night where we were called on the phone saying, you are not getting a graduation this year. Seniors, sorry, you have to leave the city tonight. So that was a big, I remember March 12th very, very well.
Yeah.
12 days after I saw the last movie in theaters for 2020. Yeah, the March 12th is a date that sticks with me. So your birthday carries a lot of weight for 2020.
What was that movie, Dyl?
Oh, it was The Invisible Man. It was my last movie of 2020 that I saw, and I believe it was the 5th movie I saw in theaters that year. So a very, very light year. Chad, recap the rest for us.
Great movie. It won a Pickle Award.
It did.
On March 13th, they closed Mount Everest. They closed a mountain. On March 18th, the Eurovision Song Contest of 2020 was canceled in Europe due to the pandemic, but we got a movie about the contest. On March 24th, India and the United Kingdom go into lockdown. Also, the International Olympic Committee in Japan postponed the Summer Olympics to 2021. So this summer, I guess, right?
Yeah.
On April 12th, Pope Francis live streams his Easter blessing. On April 14th, Donald Trump suspends funding to the WHO because, of course, he would, right? On April 23rd, Facebook removes pseudoscience and conspiracy theory as options for targeted ads as criticism mounts against social media for its role in spreading misinformation about COVID-19. Many people get their information from Facebook, and it's a problem.
Mm.
On May 6th, the first black hole located in a star system visible to the naked eye was discovered.
Oh, wow.
On May 11th, skipping a few months here, a bunch of science shit showed fossils from Homo sapiens instead of Neanderthals, indicating that modern humans may have arrived in Europe thousands of years earlier than previously thought. Okay, this is a big one. On May 25th, George Floyd was murdered by a police officer named Derek Chauvin in Minneapolis, Minnesota, spawning some of the biggest protests against police brutality against African Americans we've ever seen around the world. Mm-hmm. I protested here in Baltimore. We really need to see some change on this, and I'm glad to see the trial end in a favorable way. Just the other day, right, or the last week.
Yeah. It was last week. Yeah, the trial ended guilty on all 3 charges. But yeah, as you said, there's a lot of ground left to make up. There's a lot left to go, and I know some of these movies also touch on some very relevant topics as well. So we'll get there too as well.
Yep. On August 26th, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos became the first person in history to have a net worth exceeding $200 billion. On September 21st, Microsoft agrees to buy ZeniMax Media, including Bethesda Softworks, for $7.5 billion in what is the biggest and most expensive takeover in the history of the video game industry. On November 4th, the U.S. exits the Paris Agreement on climate change. And then on November 7th, Joe Biden is elected as the 46th president of the United States, defeating Donald Trump.
Yep, and Vice President Kamala Harris is the first female vice president-elect, which is big.
Yep. Okay, and then we have 2 births of note. Prince Charles of Luxembourg and my niece, Cassidy. And then that was all I had for births. Do you have any deaths, Dyl, that we had?
Yeah, there were some pretty notable deaths. With the pandemic. Chad, you listed a lot of current events, and most of them were either side effects of or relevant to the pandemic itself. So we did lose a lot of people pre-pandemic, and then during the pandemic due to COVID-19 and due to other reasons as well. So I'm just going to roll through all the names. It's a long list, so brace in. But we wanted to pay our respects to this select group. If we did not mention a certain person, feel free to comment below and give them some shout outs too, because it was a long year, a tough year, and we lost multiple people. So here we go. Before the pandemic, we did lose Kobe Bryant. That was a big one. Basketball fans, and he is an Oscar winner. He is one of the only athletes to win an Oscar for his animated short Dear Basketball. We also lost James Lipton, Brian Dennehy, Kirk Douglas, Max von Sydow, Kenny Rogers, Irfan Khan, Little Richard, Jerry Stiller, Lynn Shelton, Fred Willard, Ian Holm, Joel Schumacher, Carl Reiner. We got a trio of pitchers here. We got pitcher Tom Seaver, pitcher Don Larson, who was the only person to pitch a perfect game in a World Series in history of baseball, and baseball has a long history. And then Yankees pitcher Whitey Ford, a personal favorite of mine. The composer Ennio Morricone, Naya Rivera, Kelly Preston, Regis Philbin, Olivia de Havilland, who I believe was the oldest living acting Oscar winner at the time she died, right before she died. I think she was like 104. We'll talk about her, I'm sure, for several shows when we get to the 30s, 40s, 50s. Diana Rigg, Wilford Brimley, Sean Connery, David Prowse, the man behind Darth Vader, and Jeremy Bulloch, the man behind Boba Fett. Of course, our dearly beloved Chadwick Boseman, Morton Joe from Mad Max Fury Road, Hugh Keys-Byrne, and then a few Broadway names, Nick Cordero and Anne Reinking, a musician, a very notable musician, Eddie Van Halen, and then some very, very prominent figures politically, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Congressman John Lewis, and then the end of the list I have here, what is the most treasured, valuable game show host of all time? What is Alex Trebek? Who is Alex Trebek? So those are the deaths of all the people we lost. Our respects go out to their families, especially because it is so soon, so recent. And we're thinking about all those families and friends and all the other people we lost along the way. See you down the road.
Oh, perfect, Dyl. I love that little bit at the end. Yeah, so we also have a few music albums. Can't say any of these are landmark. They just came out. We don't know
They might,
how they're
develop some sort of
one day, maybe.
legacy.
So we have the New Abnormal by The Strokes. We have Fetch the Bolt Cutters by Fiona Apple. Punisher by Phoebe Bridgers. She's a new up-and-comer. RTJ4 by Run the Jewels. Folklore by Taylor Swift.
Love it.
Shore by Fleet Foxes. The Slow Rush by Tame Impala. And The Ascension by Sufjan Stevens.
Nice. All right. So that's our recap kind of 2020 and the whole year. There was a lot of that. Because there was a lot that went on, and it is so recent. So, and I think this has to do a lot with the Oscars themselves, which we can transition now into the actual Oscar ceremony itself. It was held across multiple venues in Los Angeles. There were multiple venues in Los Angeles next to the Oscar Museum. There was a few people in the Dolby Theater in LA. There were broadcasts from London and Paris. Sacha Baron Cohen and Isla Fisher were in Australia with a green screen and this giant fan blowing their hair in the wind to make it seem like they were standing outside, as only Sacha Baron Cohen would. Chad, just overall thoughts. What did you think of the ceremony itself? Since we both got to watch the whole thing, the way it was stylized, the way it was shot, the way it was executed.
Yeah, I thought it was like kind of really cool the way, because I didn't know what to expect this time with Steven Soderbergh directing it, and then it was like. The way, it kind of just looked kind of like a movie or like a prestige television show. The way it was filmed, and I thought the way they used Regina King and Lil Rel as the host, I thought that they were really good. I loved the little game show that he did.
Right.
In the middle of it.
We haven't had a real Oscar host in like 2 or 3 years. This was just more of, they almost treated them like cast members. Like you would see them pop up every now and then. And, Lil Rel had that whole game. It honestly makes me miss the host a little bit, miss the idea of having a host just to kind of keep things along. But I thought every presenter, brought something interesting. And then we have to talk about the blunder. The big blunder, and that was the actual presentation and order of the categories themselves. I went into depth in another video on my channel, which you can check out now in the top right corner of my thoughts on that. But I want to hear your thoughts, Chad, because to recap for anyone who doesn't know, they saved a different category for last. It was not Best Picture, which we've seen almost every other Oscars since, probably every Oscars ever. They saved Best Actor for last, and the assumption was, while people were watching it, they're saving the award for last because Chadwick Boseman was the front runner, and he was favored, not guaranteed, but favored to win the award for Best Actor posthumously. And people were like, okay, so they're saving this epic moment for last. And then Anthony Hopkins upset Chadwick Boseman. People define upsets in certain ways. Some people say they are genuinely upsetting. I define upset as just meaning someone who was not the front runner wins. I don't think I was upset necessarily at who won. But of course, when you have a whole moment, you're building a whole show and banking and gambling on that last moment to be this epic moment for Chadwick Boseman, and it doesn't turn out to be that way. And then Anthony Hopkins also wasn't allowed to zoom in for a speech. There's a lot of controversy surrounding it, especially since it's so fresh. So, Chad, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so just kind of with the way they did it. I mean, like it just feels off in general just to not have Best Picture last, because it's like such a prestigious title to give to a movie like Best Picture. It's like it should be at the end, but to do it in a way to hopefully, not guarantee, but hopefully have a really nice moment for Chadwick and his family and his fans and, around the world. I mean, I certainly loved him. He was the coolest Chadwick. I'm the second coolest Chadwick.
I'm going to get me a band and make me some records.
Just to have it go down that way with, it's kind of like, Joaquin Phoenix not really like knowing what to do. And, he's kind of known for his like speeches. He didn't really give any speech. He didn't really seem enthusiastic to be there. And, it just felt off. And, despite, the award going to someone, I mean, Anthony Hopkins is a fitting, person to get that award. He did a great job in that movie. But I just feel like, me personally, I don't think it always has to be like merit-based. And I think Chadwick Boseman did deserve that award. But I also think like just because like he will never have another chance to get one, and Anthony Hopkins already has one, I think it could have been cool for him to have, gotten that award, ended on a nice moment, give the award to his wife. And I think that would have been great.
that's on the voters. You know, that the voters vote for who they want, and it
Mhm.
just wasn't that just wasn't where the tide was shifting, I guess. But you know, if it's not guaranteed, you know, if the producers didn't actually look and see who was, if I bet if the producers had actually looked at the results, they're not allowed to, but if they had, they probably would have been like, oh yeah, we shouldn't do that. But I think because they were so certain, and you can never be certain. I mean, we've seen Best Picture winners go to someone who was not even. When we get to 2005, Crash was not even on the radar, really, to
Right.
win, and it did. You know, there are movies that just pop out of nowhere. Even La La Land and Moonlight. Moonlight was the next favorite to win after La La Land, but it was a pretty done deal. You know, La La Land broke a
Yeah.
record for nominations set. So
Mhm.
so yeah, it was definitely a disheartening way to end. But again, the voters voted how they voted. I can't really change that, but the producers definitely could have
Yeah.
done a better job. But that segues us into talking about the whole Oscar season as a whole, because Nomadland wins Best Picture, and it kind of swept all the awards. It won the Globe, it won the BAFTA, it won the Critics' Choice. It didn't win SAG because SAG's Best Picture award is for the ensemble. That was Trial of the Chicago Seven. So really, it was pretty much Nomadland's to lose, and it didn't. It was not a La La Land scenario where it wins all these precursors then loses at the end. And I think part of that is because the Golden Globes, they split drama and musical, but this year there was no musical, and in musical comedy it went to Borat, and that wasn't even up for Best Picture. Whereas in La La Land's year, La La Land was the musical, Moonlight was the drama. So at least Moonlight had that drama
Mhm.
win. But
Mhm.
here it was like Nomadland won everything, and there was really no competition, no real competition if you look at statistics. But I do think we have to acknowledge the films that didn't make it first before we dive into
Yep.
the 8 that did. So we're going to kind of break down our honorable mentions as to what we think are the notable films of 2020 that weren't recognized either at all in the Oscars or not in Best Picture, and then our legitimate snubs as to, or at least for me, as to what I think was expected to get in that didn't. That surprised me. So Chad, why don't you go first?
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of good movies that I really enjoyed this year.
Mm-hmm.
We had Bad Boys for Life, The
Mm-hmm.
Gentleman, Birds of Prey, The Lodge, Sonic the Hedgehog, Onward, The Hunt, The Half of It, The King of Staten Island, You Should Have Left, Hamilton. I know you don't consider that a movie, but it's just one that I really liked.
Mm-hmm.
The Old Guard, An American Pickle, Boy State, Unhinged, Tenet, Bill and Ted Face the Music, The Personal History of David Copperfield, Enola Holmes, Hubie Halloween had me laughing a lot.
Yeah,
The
he'd be
40-year-old version, not
what was that?
virgin,
40-year-old
version,
what? Oh, version. Okay.
version. Love
just
and
just don't need to
Monsters.
reiterate it for the audio listeners, or well, I guess you're all audio and video listeners, but yeah.
Right. Borat subsequent movie film, Synchronic, His House, Freaky, Run, The Croods and New Age, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, The Christmas Chronicles 2. It's
Mm,
a fun one. Godmothered, Wonder Woman 1984. I didn't love it, but it's a notable film.
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
News of the World, and Pieces of a Woman. And
Nice.
then I have another little list of movies that I thought could have been selected for Best Picture. This is my personal snubs list.
Gotcha. Go ahead.
The Assistant, The
Mm,
Invisible Man,
yeah.
Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always,
Oh yeah. Yeah. You're
Bad
rattling off
Education,
some good ones here. Yeah.
The Five Bloods, Palm Springs, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, Soul, One Night in Miami, and Another Round.
Wow. Yes, you rattled off pretty much all the ones on my list. A few. I don't know if you mentioned Wolfwalkers was another great one that I had
I
on my
just saw
list.
that. I love that.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Wolfwalkers, I love Possessor is amazing. On the Rocks is really good. A Sofia Coppola film. You said Defy Bloods, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Defy Bloods, and then basically all the ones you mentioned. You know, The Invisible Man, About Another Round, Palm Springs, Soul, The Assistant. I loved. My favorite documentary was Dick Johnson is Dead. Small Axe wasn't really a movie. It was
Movies. I
five.
forgot
Yeah,
about them.
it was five separate movies, but again, they're lumping them together as miniseries, so that's television. But the two I think that surprised most people were One Night in Miami and Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. You know, I think with this award ceremony, when you see heading into the nominations, Chadwick was the front runner, definitely, and Viola Davis was one of the big front runners for actress. So for Ma Rainey not even to get nominated for Best Picture when there are 8 to 10 possibilities, and it could have been the 9th or 10th, we don't know. That was a big snub, and I say this in my other video on my channel. I think I should have seen the Chadwick and Viola snubs coming as soon as it didn't get nominated for Best Picture, just because the last time we saw an actor win, an actor, not an actress, an actor win for a movie that wasn't nominated for Best Picture was Jeff Bridges in Crazy Heart, and that was more than a decade ago. So I think it's just a trend now that if you're not nominated for Best Picture, for Best Actor at least, statistically, you don't really have a shot. And I guess that was kind of something we should have seen coming maybe, but we thought, this year was different. We thought it might have been different, but it wasn't. I guess apparently Ma Rainey still picked up 2 awards for costumes and then again for makeup. And then One Night in Miami was a big snub just because it had a lot of hype around it. Again, usually movies that are adapted from plays do fairly well at the Oscars. They don't win a lot, but they get nominated. So the fact that it didn't was definitely a snub. I think those are the 2 that most people expected to see on the ballots, but didn't. But anyway, those are the movies that didn't make it. But now let's finally get to the movies that did. We've been talking for about 20 minutes. Let's dive into the 8 movies that you came here to see. That is in alphabetical order: The Father, Judas and the Black Messiah, Mank, Minari, Nomadland, Promising Young Woman, Sound of Metal, and The Trial of the Chicago 7, which is weird because it's 8th on the list in terms of alphabetical, but it's 7 and it bugs me. All right, so let's talk about The Father first. So this is the first nominee. It is probably the most recent one to come out, at least wide release, but it was, of course, it's been around probably longer than all these films because it premiered at Sundance. So Chad, why don't you take us through a little brief synopsis of The Father?
Yeah. Speaking of a play that was adapted into a film, The Father, 2020, directed by Florian Zeller, who also wrote the play and the movie. So it was written by Florian Zeller and Christopher Hampton. Cinematography by Ben Smithard. Music by Ludovico Einaudi. The Father is a drama based on a play written by, I already said all that. All right. Stars are Anthony Hopkins, Olivia Colman, Rufus Sewell, Imogen Poots, Olivia Williams, Mark Gatiss, Aisha Darker, and Roman Zeller, the director's son.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the plot is basically Anne, played by Olivia Colman, tries to take care of her father, Anthony, played by Anthony Hopkins, who suffers from dementia while also struggling by trying to live her own life. It's a very simple plot.
Yeah. Go ahead. Keep going. I
Sure.
have more to say.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just have some bullet points here. So the format is unique in that it puts you in the shoes of somebody who has dementia. The set and the actors change frequently to convey a change in time and the confusion of Anthony.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a really trippy movie.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because when you think of a play adaptation, you think it's gonna feel very stagey. It's gonna feel like a lot of monologues and a lot of talking in a room because that's what a play can do. A play can't really exceed those boundaries to a certain extent, and that's kind of what One Night in Miami and Ma Rainey almost not suffer from, but they do feel very much like plays adapted to cinema. But this, because you are seeing this point of view from Anthony's point of view, and you are seeing it through his eyes, and the editing. I mean, the editing, I thought it should have been a bigger front runner than it was. It was probably 3rd or 4th in terms of betting for editing next to Sound of Metal and Trial, but I think it was beautifully edited to really give this disoriented feel, but there's almost a controlled chaos. It's not all over the place. It's not like you're trying to figure out and put all the pieces together and it's all happening too fast, kind of like a Christopher Nolan movie. It's happening slow enough that you can piece some stuff together, but then at the end you find out that, spoiler alert, we're going to put a spoiler ban on all this. I forgot to mention that earlier, and Chad, you did remind me before and I forgot.
Yeah.
Expect some spoilers here. But when you find out at the end that perhaps this whole time he's been in his room in this this care facility, you realize that maybe all of this was fake. And then what does matter? And it's all just his memories kind of popping up. Imogen Poots plays one of his daughters, but is she really a daughter? Is she a caretaker? Is Olivia Williams, who I know you're a fan of Rushmore, so I'm sure you're excited to see her. Is Olivia Williams like his nurse, his daughter? Is Olivia Colman his daughter? It's very disorienting. And I think a lot of that has to do with the editing, which I was very impressed by. Yeah.
It's actually kind of reminiscent of the other movie I mentioned earlier. I'm thinking of Ending Things, where things shift around a lot and people are changing ages and things are not as they seem. And it's very confusing. But Charlie Kaufman didn't have anything to do with this one. But yeah, I mean, the film actually does confuse you to the point where I was sitting there wondering, like, are they playing a cruel joke on this poor man this whole time?
Yeah.
So I was like, you could see it from that viewpoint,
yeah,
but
because usually when movies like this, are made, it's usually from the point of view of the person taking care of them and having to, see what it's like to have them slip away. One that comes to mind is Amour, which came out in 2012, Best Picture nominee. It's told from the husband's point of view of his wife who has dementia. And even Dick Johnson Is Dead, a documentary I loved, it's kind of more of the daughter taking care of her dad rather than the dad's point of view, even though there is a lot of the dad's point of view in that, and he is not as severe, obviously, as Anthony is here. But yeah, I just thought it was very fascinating. It's a point of view that makes the movie. I think it's the point of view that they choose. And again, Anthony Hopkins is just so good in the role, and he sells it
Very good.
completely. Yeah, I mean, so many great moments and scenes. Is there like a moment that sticks out to you?
I mean, there's just so many, just like, it's just like, it's kind of like, it reminds me a little bit of Inception a little bit, where
Mhm.
he has like some sort of like totems he tries to hold, his constants. It's like
Mhm.
the art that his daughter made, wondering if his daughter's still alive, and just talking about his memory of her, and you're just like, I don't think she's still alive the way Olivia Colman keeps acting.
Dazzling girl. I don't understand why she never gets in touch, never.
Right.
And then also asking about his watch, and a lot of that stuff. And it's just like he has like a lot of confusion that makes him paranoid about who he can trust. And
To the point where he doesn't even trust the people closest to him too, which is
yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, and you see scenes of like her husband or whatever, Olivia Colman's husband, like abusing him at some point. You're like, did that really even happen?
And we don't know, and
Yeah.
is this the guy at the care facility abusing him and he's seeing
Yeah.
her husband? Is it her husband actually abusing him and he has the memories, or is it just him not knowing where he is and wanting to seek that comfort? Let's talk about the end of the movie real quick. The "I want my mummy" scene. I know when we first talked about it, you said you had some thoughts on it. What were your thoughts on that ending scene and his monologue there?
Have someone come and fetch me. No, shh. No, I want my mummy. I want her to come and fetch me.
Yeah, I mean that whole part, it just seemed a little like silly to me.
Okay.
And I was sitting there trying to think. I was like, it seems really silly, but like then again, like maybe that's just like the realism of his performance. Like, people with dementia may act what we would view as silly sometimes because they're reverting to like a childlike state almost.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I mean, there's that idea of like childhood need, like those traumas almost, or not traumas, but those things that kind of stick with you even into your adulthood. We see that a lot. I don't want to spoil much, but like in this season of This Is Us, a lot of this season is focused around Randall and his things from his childhood that are now affecting him in his adult life concerning the Black Lives Matter movement and racism that he's experienced his whole life. And now we're seeing kind of like this, when you are at that vulnerable state, when you're at the most vulnerable state, what do you cling on to? You cling on to those childhood needs and that idea of wanting to just have your mom to embrace. And that honestly is probably my favorite part of the whole movie. Honestly, I know it might seem silly just because he just starts crying and bubbling into tears, but I am thinking, like, when I am older, if I start to lose my memory, the memories that you remember the most are the ones from your childhood, the ones that you really are ingrained in you, are those childhood memories that stick out the most. So
I feel as if I'm losing all my leaves.
Your leaves?
Yeah.
in a way, I think it's a beautiful ending. But again, his whole performance through and through, even the funny stuff when he's tap dancing, he's making little sly quips here and there. I think it's all really, really well done.
very good point, Dale. Very good point. Maybe upon rewatch, I'll appreciate it a lot more.
Yeah.
It's definitely one that you have to rewatch to kind of go wrap your mind around.
Right. And the thing is, I've watched it twice now, and I will say it is a movie that is so good I never want to watch again. It's like one of those movies that now I've seen it twice. Now that I've gotten it, I just can't put myself through it. And I don't have that relatability. I don't have any sort of relatability to the plot, but somehow it just sticks with me to the point where I have to like distance myself now. I'm like, it's just too emotional to a point. So that was The Father. So now, last time I saved them all for once, but because there were so many movies, there were 8 movies, and they all got so many nominations, I'm going to talk about The Father's nominations and wins. So it was nominated for 6 nominations, and it won 2 awards. Most of these winners won 2 apiece. It was very evenly spread, this Oscars. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Editing, Best Supporting Actress for Olivia Colman, and Best Production Design. And it won Best Actor for Anthony Hopkins in a big upset, and Best Adapted Screenplay. Florian Zeller's script that he adapted from his own play.
Hell yeah.
Any thoughts on those wins? Do you think those wins are deserved, not deserved?
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for the whole Chadwick Boseman death thing, and thinking that he should have an Oscar is my only thing, then yeah, I mean, of course Anthony Hopkins is deserving of that award.
Yeah, 6 nominations for a movie that came out so late in the year where screeners were not necessarily aplenty early on in the award season. I think it did a very good job. It definitely overperformed. Speaking of a movie that came out later in the year that also overperformed, and Oscars also getting 6 nominations, Judas and the Black Messiah is the next movie we're talking about. yeah, just came out recently, HBO Max and in theaters, double release, Warner Brothers' new release strategy. I really like this film, Chad.
Yeah, it's a great
It's a good
movie.
one. Yeah, so
Yeah,
why don't you give us a little bit of background and share
absolutely.
your thoughts?
Yeah. Judas and the Black Messiah actually came out 2021, but we're talking about it 2020 because they expanded their, thing.
Yeah, the
Directed,
eligibility date. Yeah.
directed by Shaka King, written by Will Burson and Shaka King, cinematography by Sean Bobbitt, music by Mark Isham and Craig Harris. Judas and the Black Messiah is a 2021 biographical drama that was in development since 2014 about a historical figure, Fred Hampton. Stars are Daniel Kaluuya, Lakeith Stanfield, Jesse Plemons, one of my favorite actors, Dominique Fishback, Ashton Sanders, Algie Smith, Derek Britt Gibson, Lul Rel Howery, Dominique Thorne, Martin Sheen, and Amari Cheatham. Yeah, basically, the FBI has an informant, and they send him after this guy that they see as a threat. Because he's the head of the Black Panther Party.
He's basically supposed to infiltrate this cause.
Mhm.
And that's where the title stems from. Obviously, is Judas and the Black Messiah. Fred Hampton was this Jesus-like figure for Black people because he gave them a home, he gave them food, he gave them hope, and gave them inspiration. But then Judas, Judas is what you call someone who betrays you. Obviously it ties back to the biblical Judas, but and Lakeith Stanfield is the Judas of the story who betrays him. One of the things, I know we're not going to jump into Oscar nominations yet, we'll talk about them at the end, but 2 supporting actor nominations for this film, Lakeith and Daniel Kaluuya. Who is the lead of this movie, Chad? Tell me, because I don't know.
Honestly, I would if I had to say one was the lead, I would say Lakeith Stanfield, just because he is the guy you start the movie out with, and he's the guy that he's the protagonist that's infiltrating this thing. So he's like the action. He's like the inserting thing into this world. Yeah, central focus. And so I would put Daniel Kaluuya as a supporting, although they're both very good. And holy crap, does Daniel Kaluuya steal every scene he's in.
and the thing is, the Academy, I think a lot of people were in the same wavelength where they had to think about it for a sec, like, who is the lead of this movie? And some of them probably did think, Daniel Kaluuya really was the lead. It's about the Messiah. So I'm going to put him in, lead, and I'll put Lakeith in supporting. But then, of course, people who were, on the wavelength of other people are like, no, Daniel Kaluuya's campaign in supporting, we're going to vote for him supporting. And that's how you end up with 2 supporting nominations instead of a lead. And I just thought it was very interesting that both of them got in, and they're both deserving. I mean, I think Daniel has a lot more of the showy, more presentational acting. Like, he gets those big moments. They're in the script for him, but Lakeith almost has to make them for himself. Lakeith Stanfield, a lot of his acting is watching everything going around him because he is that observer. He is the spy in the Black Panther Party who is basically taking it all in to try to use that information against them. And those moments, especially in that large auditorium where he's giving that speech, Daniel Kaluuya's character Fred Hampton, and Lakeith Stanfield's Bill O'Neill's just standing there with his fist up, and he makes eye contact with Jesse Plemons. And there's that like raw, just natural like sense of betrayal that he feels now that he's starting to believe in the cause, but also he has this duty to do, otherwise he'll go to jail. I mean, it's so complicated and so convoluted, but it's so impactful. The amount of words he doesn't have to say to get that across. I think it is watching 2 of the best rising actors just eating up every scene together. And Dominique Fishback's great too. She provides the heart. And I think for this movie, I was worried, especially in that first half. I was like, this might be a little too heavy. But then you get those moments of Dominique Fishback's character and that romance and that love and that just sheer sense of, just nurture and warmth from her. And that's really where, I said in my review for it on Letterboxd, the first half is a really nice slow burn, but the second half is like just a masterpiece filmmaking. It is just so well done. Great film overall.
Yeah, like how you're saying with Lakeith Stanfield and Daniel Kaluuya both being rising actors. Like, I love Lakeith ever since seeing Atlanta, and then seeing them both in Get Out, and just seeing like all the range that Daniel Kaluuya has, especially. I'm just like, I didn't expect him to be this guy in this movie. Just like every single thing I see him in is just different, and I'm just like, this guy's insane. And it's just in this movie when with Lakeith's performance, like how you said, it's a little more subtle than Kaluuya's showy performance. Like, yeah, that's definitely true. But I mean, you get with Lakeith in this movie, you have to get the acting within the acting here, because he has to act as this persona to rise within the ranks of that Black Panther chapter. And
he's essentially playing two different characters.
Yeah, because you have him, being that role where he's the guy that will punish somebody for, coming in and be actually doing what he's doing right now. He'd be the guy to punish that, and he's like, I hope no one else notices that I'm doing that. And and then you see the desperation of him and just the paranoia around him, and because really he's kind of caught between a rock and a hard place here, where he has the threat of going to jail, or he has the threat of being murdered by these people that wouldn't like to see someone doing what he's doing. And the real man actually killed himself, and William O'Neill in 1990. It was
the
January
night after the interview.
January 15th, 1990. Which was like a few months before I was born. And he did it by walking into freeway traffic. So it's a very sad story for actually both of them, because, Daniel Kaluuya's character is murdered in the movie by the Infiltrate.
Yeah, and something I say in my review for the channel is that, because I did review the movie when it came out at Sundance, one of the things I like the most about that death scene, I shouldn't say like the most, because there's nothing to like about it, but filmmaking-wise, something I was intrigued by, you don't see it up close. You see him getting shaken by his wife because he's drugged by Lakeith, and he can't wake up. And you see him being shaken, but then you see her, and it's her who's the focus when he gets shot.
He's good and dead now.
She is, again, like I said, that heart and soul. It's Daniel and Lakeith giving these really deep, dark, emotional performances, but then she's that kind of heart and soul. And to see her just stone-faced and not even shedding a tear when that happens, I think bringing the focus to her was just such a genius directorial choice that I really don't think a lot of directors would have made. I think a lot of them might have gone the pulpier route of watching him get shot up close and personal, but I think there's almost something more effective to seeing the person who was closest to him hearing it and not being able to see it.
It's actually kind of terrifying, because you don't know if he's going to make it, survive. You're like, oh, she's like, oh, he was okay, he wasn't dead, and then someone shoots him, and then they go, so he's dead now, or something like that. So terrifying.
Yeah, it's terrifying. It's heartbreaking. But again, deserving of all the nominations. I like to say, if everyone asks, which of these movies should I watch, this is the one that feels like the biggest must see for right now in the times of right now today and what America is going through right now. I think this is a movie that should be shown in classrooms to high schoolers and college kids. I think it is a movie that, while there are a lot of movies focused on the Black experience, watching a movie where you can really see the ins and outs of both sides, opposing sides, and seeing not just what they are doing right, but both sides do have some aspects of crossing the line at some extent, but the reasoning for the Black Panther Party is much more justified with this film, where a lot of people, I think, myself included, weren't as well educated about the Black Panthers and their whole cause and their whole belief system. And I think it's really important to watch this film and understand where they're coming from and why they fight for the things they fight for, and when they decide to cross the line and when they don't. And I think it's just a very important film for those reasons.
Amen.
Yeah. So the nominations, it got 6 nominations and 2 wins. Again, another film that got 2 wins. It got nominated for Best Picture. Obviously, that's why we're talking about it. Best Supporting Actor for Lakeith Stanfield, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Cinematography. It won for Best Song, the song Fight For You by her, and then Best Supporting Actor for Daniel Kaluuya. So, I was a little worried, is it going to split because you have 2 actors from the same movie? But no, this year was Daniel Kaluuya's to lose through and through all season. He won all the precursors he could. What are your thoughts on the song winning? I know you like the song, right?
Yeah, that was really interesting, because I really liked Speak Now. I love Leslie Odom Jr. I love Hamilton. So I really love Speak Now from that, from One Night in Miami. But when I was watching the performances throughout of them, I like the Speak Now performance, but I really like the music from her, and just the band vibe with it. I love the bass, and it just seems so. Yeah. I was really digging the performance, and so I was like, if this won, I wouldn't be that mad. And then it did win, and I wasn't mad.
Right. Well, I'll tell you who is mad, and that is some people, because one movie has been named the #1 movie of all time on the AFI list, and it only won 1 Oscar. Citizen Kane only won 1 Oscar. But what movie won 2 Oscars last night? Well, I shouldn't say last night, because you're listening to this a few days later. But what film just won 2 Oscars, which is one more than Citizen Kane? Mank. So let's get into Mank. That was my segue. I kind of fumbled it a little bit there.
That's
This
okay.
was an interesting one. So let's talk about Mank, Chad.
Yep, absolutely. Mank, directed by David Fincher, the great David Fincher. Written by Jack Fincher, David's dad. Cinematography by Eric Messerschmidt. Music by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. Great teamwork by those two.
Yeah, and they won an award for a different movie in the same year, which is crazy.
Yep. Mank is a biographical drama about the author of Citizen Kane, Herman J. Mankiewicz. It was written in the 90s by David's dad, Jack, who died in 2003. It was supposedly meant to be made after David made The Game in 1997 to star Kevin Spacey and Jodie Foster, but never happened.
I didn't know that. Wow.
It was finally announced in 2019 and was released on Netflix in 2020. Mank was shot in black and white using RED cameras. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross used period authentic instrumentation for the score. The sound of the film seemed accurate to how a movie at the time sounded. Those are just some other notes I added.
Yeah.
The stars are Gary Oldman, Amanda Seyfried, Lily Collins, Arliss Howard, Tom Pelphrey, Charles Dance, Sam Troughton, Ferdinand Kingsley, Tuppence Middleton, Tom Burke, Joseph Cross, Jamie McShane, Toby Leonard Moore, Monica Grossman, Levin Rambin, Jeff Harms, and Bill Nye the Science Guy was in this.
Bill Nye. Did you catch it when you watched it the first time? Did you catch it?
No. I was like researching this. I was writing down the stars, and then I was like, "What?"
Yeah. Did you go back and watch? You should go back and watch it. It's funny because
I looked at a clip.
Yeah, because when I watched it, I was like, "Is that no?" And then I read the cast at the end. I was like, "It was." David Fincher always finds just really interesting casts.
Really interesting.
Yeah, so Chad, give me your thoughts because I haven't heard any thoughts from you on Mank because I know we talked a little bit about some of these movies, but why don't you tell us about your opinion on Mank?
Let me read the plot synopsis and then I'll go into my opinion.
Go ahead.
So the plot, it's all right. The plot is Mank is recruited by Orson Welles to write the screenplay for a movie for which Welles had been given complete creative freedom to make. However, Mank is destined to not receive any credit for writing the screenplay. He befriends an actress, Marion Davies, and ends up writing the screenplay about her and a powerful businessman of the time, William Randolph Hearst. And Mank ends up confronting Welles, asking for joint credit, which he receives because he believes this to be his greatest work. So I've been very vocal in certain circles about how I don't think Mank is a good movie. I don't like it. And it's, pretentious, all this stuff. David Fincher thinks he's so great type of a deal. But because of this show, I had to actually sit down and watch it in its entirety. And I got to say, I liked it more than I thought I was going to.
Good.
Going through this movie, I'm not known for loving classics, and that's a bit of an inspiration for the show. Like, now I'll be forced to watch, a lot of older movies and just broaden my horizons with certain things. So, and I actually had seen Citizen Kane a while back, and I've since seen it maybe another couple times. I really like Citizen Kane a lot. So just basically seeing a movie version of how that got made was actually pretty cool. I found it a lot funnier than I thought it would be. I thought Gary Oldman in his performance was really funny.
Nerds is Brooklynese for nuts.
Jeepers.
Yeah.
Talking about socialism and just making quips and jokes all around town. And I just thought just everything just seems so authentic to a movie now would have been back then. It just kind of seemed really inventive and neat.
And I think that's why a lot of the buzz, was around this film, because David Fincher is known for kind of breaking the mold for movies. But now he's kind of going back to the traditional mold. But because of how movies are made today, going back to the traditional mode is now essentially breaking the boundaries. So it's kind of like this whole big full circle type thing. And he does a really good job with it directorially and stylistically. I mean, it wins, spoiler alert, it wins for production design, cinematography. And I think that's exactly where it should have won, because it's beautifully shot in black and white. That feels old-timey. It's got that grain on it. It's, the sets they make, you look at behind the scenes shots, that car scene where they're driving, they built a whole set, the old-fashioned set where you make the background move behind them and make it look like they're driving when they're really just sitting in a car. Just really, really nice sets and beautiful work. The sound is great. Obviously it wasn't going to beat another movie for sound, obviously. But it has great old timey sound that's just so interesting to hear now in a modern day movie. I think, partially, the script is about a period that happened a long time ago, but it was also written about 2 or 3 decades ago, and I think that does show a
Mhm.
little bit. The dialogue isn't kind of in line with what we see now today, but again, it's not necessarily trying to be. But I do think, putting on a script from a while ago, things are bound to be dated even when they are period scripts. Like Judas is about it's a period piece, but the script was written today, so it has more of a modern flow to it, whereas Mac doesn't, obviously.
Mhm.
But I think it's special that he carried on his dad's script, and
Yeah.
put it on. Um,
And it was
yeah,
actually really cool to see certain things like the big dinner scene where he has like that confrontation with the the big people and
first, yeah.
stuff. And he's drunk all the time and he's just and it's cool because like you see like the long dinner table scene and that's kind of like a callback to Citizen Kane. I think there's like a
Yeah.
big
Mhm.
dinner scene in that movie, and it just like throughout the thing, it just shows how his experiences influence his writing of that movie. I thought that was pretty cool too.
Mr. Mankiewicz.
I think part of the reason why people aren't exactly warming up to it is because it is advertised as something a little bit different. It is advertised as the making of Citizen Kane, and it's really not. It's the making of the script. It's the inspiration for
Mhm.
Kane, but it's not. It's not like your Disaster Artist or your Dolomite Is My Name, where you
Right.
see the filming process and you see the actors and you see it rolling out in cinemas. You see the inspiration of writing it, and then you see the Oscars. So you don't see that middle part. I think a lot of people were expecting that middle
Yeah, I
part.
mean, Orson
And that's not
Welles
what
is
it is.
barely in the movie. He's in a couple
Right.
scenes.
But I
So
will say Tom Burke was great casting. I mean, he nails it.
he sounds exactly
He
like
sounds
him.
exactly like it, looks kind of
Yeah,
like him a little
kind
bit.
of.
Yeah, and that moment where he does act out, and you see how like, oh wow, this is now taking inspiration from Orson too, and putting him in the script, and then you see him take credit for it as well. I mean, it doesn't paint Orson in the best light,
No.
but it's interesting to see those parallels between Citizen Kane, especially in those scenes. It's old timey. It's exactly the Academy's cup of tea, is what I like to say. It's a movie about Hollywood. They love Hollywood movies. They gave Once Upon a Time in Hollywood a production design Oscar last year because they love movies where they can see Hollywood as it used to be and relive those glory days. And this is part of it. I don't think it's very entertaining because it is slower and it's not the type of dialogue we're used to hearing. And it's well made. And I think that's what sets it apart from other movies of its kind. But I don't know. I'm kind of with you where it's like, it's good, but I appreciate it more than I like it.
Yeah. I mean, I could watch it again, but I'm not rushing to. So
Right, exactly. So anything else to say before I get to the nominations about Mank?
yeah, go ahead.
All right. 10 nominations for Mank, which is the biggest of the night. So this is what's interesting. Again, it's not a front runner for any of the big awards, but again, it racks up a lot of nominations. And I think this is, again, because it's right up the Academy's, alley, right up their alley. What was I saying? All right. So it was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Gary Oldman, Best Supporting Actress for Amanda Seyfried, who's great, by the way. She's great in it. Best Original Score for Reznor and Ross. Best Costume Design, Best Makeup and Hairstyling Design, Best Sound Design, and then it won for Best Production Design and Best Cinematography, which was a bit of an upset. Cinematography, a lot of people were predicting Nomadland, but if it's going to win 2 awards, I think those are the 2. Maybe sound, but again, like I said, there's a movie here that is just way more deserving of sound. Any other
Mhm.
year, this is your best sound winner because I did like what they did with the sound design, but they just happen to
Mhm.
come out in the same year as a movie that used it more brilliantly than I've ever seen sound in a movie ever. So,
Yep.
yeah, so that was Mank, and now let's keep going along the M train of movie titles that are one word long and have an M in the title. Minari.
Minari.
Chad, tell us about Minari.
Oh, Minari. Beautiful film. Directed by Lee Isaac Chung, written by Lee Isaac Chung, cinematography by Lachlan Milne. I don't know how to say that. Music by Emile Mosseri. Minari is a drama and semi-autobiographical take on Chung's upbringing.
Mhm.
Chung had initially meant to adapt a novel called My Antonia, or Antonia, by Willa Cather, published in 1918. But when he found out she hadn't wanted any film adaptations of her work, he decided to write about his own life since he grew up on a farm in Arkansas. Stars are Stephen Yeun, Han Ye-ri, Alan Kim, Noel K. Cho,
Mhm.
Yoon Yo Jung, Will Patton, Scott Hayes, and Jacob Wade. I tried my best with some of those names. I apologize if I fucked them up.
And it's funny because when she won her Oscar, Yoon Jung did say, "This is how you pronounce my name," because Brad Pitt butchered it much worse than you did. So
she seemed okay with it though, because she seemed to fawn over Brad Pitt quite a bit.
She loved Brad Pitt. I mean, that was an amazing moment. Just if you're listening to this way past the time we're airing it, go back and watch Yoon Jung's speech. It's beautiful. All right, Chad, give your thoughts. Give your basic synopsis and then some thoughts.
Yeah. So the story follows a family of South Korean immigrants who try to make it in the rural United States during the 1980s. Well, here's some notes. Basically, I took Minari, which gives the film its title, is a plant, and its technical name is Oenanthe javanica, but it's called Minari in Korean. The plant grows in moist areas, but it's apparently known for growing despite adverse conditions. And this is what I thought was kind of symbolism for the Yi family, thriving on their new farm in a situation not many Korean families or any minority families have done so before. So, I mean, did you pick up any of that in your?
Yeah, I mean, the whole movie is, based around farming and trying to essentially plant these seeds to win, to get a crop to sell, to make money. But I think a lot of the idea of planting seeds, this movie kind of essentially feels like something that is growing and consistently growing with time, and that is the relationships. And you see these seeds planted in the beginning of the movie between Jacob and his wife, and then again with David and his grandma. That little. That riff between them, the parents fighting all the time, the David and his grandmother not really getting along a lot, the sister trying to step up and fill in her mom's shoes because her mom's always working and she has to essentially take care of David herself because grandma can't, because grandma's not your typical grandma. She's not the type of grandma to like cook for you, and she's not your traditional grandma. And I think it's just very interesting that we see those seeds planted very early on, and as the movie goes along, these relationships grow so much and they go through so much, but it never hits this like huge climax. There's a climax at the end, of course, but it never really hits this any huge dramatic beats that like flip their world upside down. It's just very gradual. It's just living with these characters. It's just taking in their experiences. Little instances happen here and there, but it's really not until that last moment with the fire where that climax comes, and then we see their world turned upside down. But by that point, I think a lot of the growth and a lot of the examining of relationships has already happened. Because Grandma and David are now more connected than they have ever been, especially at the start. And the parents, she has put her foot down and said, "No, I'm not happy with you, and I'm not happy with this, and it's not going to work." And of course, the fire then brings them back together at the end, and that's kind of when he also realizes that there's more than just the farm, and there's more than just the crops. But it really takes a while to get to that climax. And I was impressed how it was able to hold my attention throughout without any huge dramatic moments. I mean, I think the most dramatic moments are the arguments between the parents, David giving the grandmother piss instead of Mountain Dew, and then like a few of the awkward interactions at the church. Otherwise, it's just living with these characters and seeing their day by day and watching their relationships grow just as slow as the farm grows its crops. And I think it's a great metaphor. And it's all about growth. It's all about growth, and I think it's a beautiful film, a slice of life, but a beautiful one.
Yeah, there's a lot of great like metaphors and just things in this movie, because they work at this chicken processing plant, and they're Jacob is basically a sexer, so he divides the chicks between their sexes, and then he explains to Alan. I mean, Alan might be a little young to hear this, and I was even David.
Alan's the actor, and he's adorable, by the way. Yes.
Yeah, and I was very disturbed to hear this myself. But they basically discard the male chicks, and it was like a really upsetting but kind of nice little moment where you kind of heard I'm doing it again. Jacob's motivation for getting away from that life to basically get something that's his, that he can pass on to his children and just be self-sustaining with his family and just like have like a business of their own. Because in his mind, maybe this was how he was taught, is that males are only valuable if they're useful. And then that's what he says with these little chicks, is that the males aren't useful because no one finds them tasty. And so it's just that, and then just you could see like that's kind of what's driving him, and it's so, that notion is so strong in him that it does start to harm his relationship with his family and his wife and the grandma and everybody. And when you do have like those climaxes, like in the hospital, when because David has like a sort of like heart condition going on, and the wife basically has to say, what is your, are you here for the actual kind of like, family, or are you actually just, is the farm more important to you? And then you kind of get to see that a little bit in the fire when he tries to go to hold on to a lot of these things that he spent so much time and effort growing. And then you sit there and it's kind of a nail biting moment, because you're like, are these people about to die in a fire?
Right. Yeah.
Trying to protect this thing that he spent so much time, or is he going to actually like wisen up and go, no, my family's more important than this dream? But then the movie doesn't end with them having to not do a farm anymore. They're actually like, throw away what was, burnt, and then they're just continuing on. It's like the Minari of it. It keeps growing.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what's interesting too, is because the one plant that survived, or the one crop that survives, is the Minari, because it was grown, it was down by the creek, and that was planted with sheer love. And I think that's the difference, is these crops that were made by Jacob, they were planted for strict monetary purposes, financial reasons. But hers, she planted it for love and her roots and her heritage, and this feeling of togetherness and doing something with David. And that is beautiful, that at the end you see them picking the Minari, because it's assumed that they had to start over with all the other crops. So now what's left is that beautiful Minari that grows. And it's just beautiful seeing that be the
Minari. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Right.
And that's one of my favorite parts of the movie, is the growing relationship and the arc between, just the arc of that relationship between David and Sunja, the grandma.
Yeah.
싫어? 이리 와. 아이고, pretty boy.
Because at first he does not like her. He doesn't like her ways. He doesn't like his family's heritage from Korea. He's like, she smells bad. She has this gross tea or whatever that she's trying to make me drink.
Yeah,
she doesn't do normal grandma stuff. Yeah, and
he asks her, like, why aren't you a normal grandma? And as a grandmother, she probably, there's that sense of like, what are you talking about? But inside, she plays such a multi-layered performance that inside you can see she's almost kind of like, a little hurt by it, a little like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. And then you start to see them bond more. You start to see her, give more of a crap about, her grandkids. And not that she didn't before, but now she actually is trying to make the effort to be more of a grandmother.
너는 strong boy야. 할머니가 본 사람 중에서 제일 strong boy야.
It's a beautiful relationship, the two of them. I mean, that is the central relationship that's the most intriguing to me.
And I don't know if there's some symbolism here, but I think I picked up on something else where it was like the relationship symbolized the passing of old Korean traditions to the new American Korean as they try to start their new life there. Like, it's okay to, bring in new, like, Americanized values, and, you're drinking your Mountain Dews and all this stuff. But, meanwhile, you can also take other things from Korea and incorporate that into your new, beautiful, combined tradition, combined culture, like with the Minari. So.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because a lot of food, just as a food person, like I look and there's a lot of food that is rooted in this immigration and what is brought to us. We didn't design all the American food here. It was all food is inspired from different areas of the world. They all have different roots somewhere. So to see, again, like you said, like that blending of cultures and that adapting of cultures, and when the daughter asks Jacob, hey, like, why are we planting these crops? Why aren't we planting American crops? And he's like, do you think the Koreans here, they're going to miss what they had at home? And that's where you see like this taking of culture and bringing it here. It's a beautiful story of immigration. And again, it does not try to romanticize it either. There are beautiful moments found in the little things, but the beautiful moments are with each other. It's not what they have and where they're living in their scenario, because what they have, it's not great. It's not the best living scenario, and it doesn't shy away from that. You see, the threats of, a hurricane may blow our whole house down, or, there's no running water. Like, it does not shy away from that, and saying, it is tough for immigrants, especially at this time period. It is tough for them, but there can be beauty found here, and that cannot be, counted in dollars and coins.
Beautiful,
So,
Dyl.
yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
it's a beautiful film. Nominations, it got 6 nominations and only one win. It only won once. Very deserving win. It was nominated for Best Picture, Director, Actor for Stephen Yeun, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Original Score. And of course, Yoon Jung won for Best Supporting Actress, and that was a huge win. I honestly had a different favorite in the race just because I loved Maria Bakalova's performance in Borat, but if there had to be someone else, I mean, it was really a toss up between the two of them. I think Yoon Jung is amazing. She really delivered an amazing performance and really was the heart and soul of that film.
페니스 브로큰, 페니스 브로큰.
Let's continue down the road, shall
Yeah.
we, with the Best Picture winner. I'm working these segues on the spot.
Right.
I hope they work. So the next movie we'll be talking about is Nomadland, which won Best Picture, and like I said earlier in the show, it swept. It won the Globes, it won BAFTA, it won Critics' Choice, it won Indie Spirits. Even it is the movie of 2020 by many people's standards, especially awards wise. So give us a little bit of Nomadland.
All right, Nomadland, written and directed by the great Chloe Zhao. Cinematography by Joshua James Richards. Music by Ludovico Einaudi. We heard that name before. Nomadland is a drama based on the 2017 nonfiction book Nomadland, Surviving America in the 21st Century by Jessica Bruder. Frances McDormand and Peter Spears, who are both in the movie, bought the rights to the book and then approached Chloe Zhao to direct after seeing her other film, The Writer, at the 2017 Toronto International Film Festival. Filming took place in 2018 with Zhao splitting time between working on Nomadland and the upcoming Marvel film Eternals. Stars are Frances McDormand, David Stratham, Bob Wells, Peter Spears, Derek Enders, Linda May, Charlene Swanky, and many others. There's lots of names. I didn't feel like writing them all down.
And what's interesting is a lot of them aren't traditional actors. They are still, of course, performing a script. I mean, a lot of people are like, they're not actors. And I'm like, no, they are. They're still performing a script. But they are playing themselves to a degree. Yeah, which is very interesting.
Yep, the plot is Fern, played by Frances McDormand, loses her job in 2011 due to the U.S. gypsum plant in Empire, Nevada shutting down. She decides to sell most of her belongings and become a nomad living out of a van. An interesting thing, McDormand, Zhao, and other crew lived in vans during the filming of Nomadland, really living in the shoes of the subjects of the film and amongst the subjects of the film. To me, this is great method acting, and it's basically anthropology, like living among the subculture of people in America, the nomads.
And I think the common thread through a lot of these films is empathy. You really get a great sense of empathy, and I think that is because the directors really care about it. And again, these are more indie films. They're not made for big studios. They're made for the people who are making them. They're not made for the financial or the commercial success. And I think that's what's beautiful about a lot of these films. Nomadland, just the level of empathy conveyed in this film through Chloe Zhao's directing, her editing. She edits the movie as she goes too, and that's what's also beautiful. She has complete control of what the vision is, and sometimes that can be a problem, but I think for her it really works because she can tell the story that she wants to tell to the most effectiveness. And I was worried at first. I was like, Frances McDormand and David Strathern are acting with a bunch of people who are playing themselves. Like, how are they going to fit into the overall story? But they fit in really nicely to the point where you almost forget that they are acting. And it feels more like a documentary. And some people have said it's slow, but I think, there's something beautiful about the serenity and the calm, because, you see with a lot of movies about poverty and about, walks of life that we don't normally see, they tend to sometimes almost push the drama. And I think what we were talking about with Minari, and again here with Nomadland, they don't push the drama to a point where it's overly either sappy or it's melodramatic. They don't. They just let it be. They let it be how it is. And there is drama along the way. There's a moment where the plates break and we jump because that is the big event in this movie, but it's something so little as plates breaking, but at the same time, because this is the tone they're setting and this is the pace we're going and the style of movie it is, that moment feels like a big climax because that's just in the confines of the story being told.
Yeah, it's like a little slice of life movie where you follow, all these characters. You follow Fern, going from place to place, meeting up with a lot of these nomads. And, she works at an Amazon plant at one point, which is really interesting, like why they would allow them to film in an Amazon plant, like a movie about like how Amazon and a lot of these big places, shutting down other places are basically forcing, this homeless crisis and people having to do this. And it's like, it doesn't paint Amazon in a good light and stuff. But, Yeah, I mean, so you get like a lot of these, nice small moments with like Swanky and the other gentleman. I don't know his name. The guy who gives the speech about talking
That's
about his
Bob
son
Wells, yeah.
and Bob
Santa.
Wells.
Santa.
Yeah,
as they
yeah,
call him.
and he says he has the thing that Dyl has been saying this entire thing. See you down the road.
I don't ever say a final goodbye. I always just say I'll see you down the road.
Because it's like this basically kind of catchphrase of the nomads, and well, not catchphrase, but salutations kind of a deal, because he says like, it's more beautiful to just say, I'll see you down the road, I'll see you at another time, rather than just saying goodbye for good. And there's I don't know if anybody's seen Sons of Anarchy, but there's this like really nice moment where a powerful death happens, and then the main character's like, I'll see you again soon, brother, or something like that, where it's just like, it's more beautiful to say, I'll see you another time, rather than.
And we see it goes for full circle. We end the movie kind of where we started, because Bob Wells, she originally starts with Linda May and Bob Wells, and then Swanky, and then she kind of transitions into the other parts of the movie, and then she makes her way back around to where she was originally, and that's when we find out Swanky is passed, and they're throwing the rocks in the fire, and then we got that speech with Bob Wells.
Yeah.
What's interesting also is that Swanky's very well alive. And she was at the Oscars. She looked beautiful, by the way. It was just amazing seeing the nomads, themselves, go up there and remind people, like, this isn't a documentary. We are telling our stories, but there is a level of, fiction just to some of the stories. But it doesn't feel forced either. It doesn't feel like it's just shoehorned in there to make like a dramatic effect. It feels authentic to have, some characters that do pass on, so then you can have those see you down the road moments stick more. Because if he were to tell a story about his son, it's such an impactful story, but then when you also pair it with Swanky herself passing away, and then he throws in the rock and says see you down the road, it just kind of connects it all more. Having that moment. So a lot of people have said, like, why would they give her a fake cancer diagnosis? And it's like, yeah, I mean, if you look at it from that angle, it's a little weird, but she agreed to do the movie, and she did it, and she did a beautiful job. She was one of my 5 supporting actresses of the year I would have awarded, because she steals the show for me. As great as Frances McDormand is, and she's amazing through every note and every scene, she's gonna be great. But Swanky just comes in that one scene where she's talking about the swallows.
Come around a bend, was a cliff, and find hundreds and hundreds of swallow nests on the wall of the cliff.
And then at the end, you see the payoff of where she opens the video, and it's the swallow nests and the eggshell, like she says, on the water. It just gets me every time. And I've seen this 4 times. I was worried. I was like, this movie doesn't feel like a movie I'd want to sit down and watch 4 times, because it is sad. There's a lot of sadness to it, but I think what I get more and more from every time is the hope. And that idea of, yes, there's poverty, and yes, it is not great for every walk of life. There is a beauty to be found on the open road. And when she's running through the rocks at that, site where David is the tour guide, basically, of, and she's running around the rocks, and she's just dancing around basically in this rocks, that's her finally, I think, embracing this road life and saying, like, I'm not just here to live and survive and because I have to. I'm here because I'm finding something out of it. I'm making something out of it, and I'm finding the beauty in it. And I think filming in the most beautiful places of the world doesn't hurt either. It just looks gorgeous through and through. I think it's a beautiful film, and the fact that I can watch it 4 times, and every time I'm like, need to turn everything off, need to put subtitles on, like I can't be distracted. And usually if I watch a movie 3 or 4 times, I can check my phone every now and then, but I don't want to, because I'm just so enamored by it. I'm so intrigued. It's a walk of life we don't know much about, but it's a walk of life that is still relatable, because there are such levels of empathy where you can relate with these characters even if you're not living through their shoes.
Yeah. And even though you're talking about Swanky not, actually being dead, and just like she's acting in a role and stuff, but it's like the fact of the matter is, just because Swanky isn't actually, that's not her story that she's actually acting at. It's someone's story, I'm sure,
right.
And it's so.
Yeah, just beautiful filmmaking. And again, it's not a movie that you need the behind the scenes for to understand that there was a lot of personal care given to it. But when you find out, a lot of the ins and outs on how it was made, it only makes it more rich and beautiful, because you find out, wow, like they really went through all that to get that result and that product, and living in vans and living in those shoes, and it was beautiful. And shout out to the sound designer who sound designed the film, because Frances McDormand howled in the middle of her Oscar speech, and everyone was like, she's crazy wolf lady. It turns out the sound guy's name was Wolf, and he unfortunately killed himself a little while back. So that was their way of honoring him, was howling for Wolf, because they would howl when they saw him. Yeah, so again, a beautiful speech even that kind of follows in line with the themes of the movie, you know, like this
Hmm.
idea of togetherness and finding companionship and making the best out of the worst and finding beauty in the little moments, you know. Um
Yeah,
yeah,
she
so
really became that role.
yeah,
So
just so beautiful. Chloe Zhao is going to be a name I think we will remember forever. I
mhm.
really do think so. She's only the second woman to win Best Director, and the first woman of color to win Director, and she's directing a Marvel film in the same year that Nomadland came out, or a year later. So, again, she's going to be a big name. I have a feeling, unless Eternals is the worst crap we've ever seen, I have a feeling we are going to be talking about it for a while because I haven't seen The Rider, but is it good, Chad?
Oh yeah, it's great, and the writer's really cool too because in a similar vein of Nomadland, the writer basically stars. There's no Frances McDormand or anything. It basically stars everybody who the real story affects.
Right.
So she took kind of like how they did with Swanky. These people experience this thing. It's about a guy who has an accident. And he can no longer do rodeo and ride horses, and it's basically just that's what the story is, and it's the
Right.
same people acting in their own story. It's really interesting.
Yeah, a beautiful film through and through. 6 nominations again. This is the 6 of these 8 films were nominated 6 times. Nomadland is one of them. It actually won the most awards of the night at 3. And this is interesting because you usually see a movie sweep. If it's a big winner, if it's considered the big winner, it usually wins a ton of awards. Titanic, Lord of the Rings, Mad Max Fury Road a few years ago won a ton of awards. But it's interesting that all these movies kind of got their even amount of awards, save for one that got 0. But everyone won either 1 or 2 awards. Nomadland was a big winner, but only by 1 more award, by 3. But here are the nominations. It was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Cinematography, and Best Editing. And then it won, this is a murderous row of awards, Best Picture, Director, and Actress for Frances McDormand. I mean, those are the 3, probably the best 3 awards you could get. Best Picture, Director, and Actress. So the fact that it won all 3, I mean, I think it is the movie of the year award speaking. We'll see when we rank them later how it falls or if it ends up being our pick. But I think, you know, just the fact that it won those 3 big awards means that everyone was kind of on the same wavelength. At least the majority was. Beautiful film. Yep. All right, so speaking of the second female director, second woman to win Best Director, we are now transitioning to another woman, a promising young woman. You know, segues will be segues. We'll see. And we're talking about promising young woman. Chad, why don't you give us your lowdown?
Yes, Promising Young Woman, written and directed by Emerald Fennell. Cinematography by Benjamin Kraken. Music by Anthony Willis. Promising Young Woman is a comedy thriller created in concept in 2017 and sold to Margot Robbie's Lucky Chap Entertainment after pitching the opening scene, which is phenomenal. The filming lasted only 23 days. Pretty impressive.
Wow.
Stars Carey Mulligan, Bo Burnham, Alison Brie, Clancy Brown, Jennifer Coolidge, Laverne Cox, Chris Lowell, Connie Britton, Adam Brody, Max Greenfield, Christopher Mintz-Plasse, Sam Richardson, Alfred Molina, Molly Shannon, Stephen Monroe, and a cameo by Emerald Fennell.
As the blowjob lips lady on the video.
Yes. So basically the plot is Cassandra Cassie Thomas seeks to avenge the death of her best friend who was a victim of rape. So like as I was saying, the opening scene is it grasps you from the very beginning because you have it essentially opens on a kind of a club bar scene with these guys who are sitting there talking about, you know, how they can't do this or that because women aren't allowed on their golf course, and they're just kind of an anti-women kind of talk that they talk about, and then they see Cassie sitting there seemingly drunk, to where she can't even like sit up. And so they're basically saying like, oh, she's kind of asking for it because, you know, she's drunk as hell in a place like this and guys are weird. And, maybe she, so they're basically kind of victim blaming a little bit there. Yeah. And then Adam Brody, one of my favorite actors from the OC, he goes over to, he seems like a nice guy at first, right? And he he wants to find out where her phone is, take her back to her apartment, just make sure she gets home safely. But then he's like, no, actually, you know what? Why don't you come over to my place for a while? And then it starts to get really weird, and he basically it's a weird thing that happens. He goes to he gets her back to his place. He goes to kiss her. She doesn't respond at all, and then he acts like, oh, that was really good. And then he takes her back to his bed, and he starts to kiss her and stuff. And then he goes to start removing her underwear, and then she keeps saying like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like she keeps saying it like kind of out of it, like acting.
What are you doing?
And then all of a sudden she sits up and she goes, hey, what are you doing right now?
Hey, I said, what are you doing?
That performance right there with her going from that to that is just so, and she kind of says it to the camera actually. So it's almost like she's saying it to not just Adam Brody's character, but the audience and the world. Like, what are you doing right now?
Right.
So basically saying there's an issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that opening scene is great. I think it does wrap you in. It tells you exactly what the tone of the piece is going to be. I think a lot of people have been divisive about Promising Young Woman. If you look on Letterboxd, they're either 5-star reviews or they're half-star reviews. It's pretty split, and because this is such a provocative film, there are so many conversations to be had about this film. And I did feel like the conversations themselves that were made in result of the film have honestly been the reason why this film, I think, is impactful, more for the conversations that have stemmed from it than the actual film itself.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I adored this movie. I got to see it in the theater. It was one of the first movies I saw back in the theater, and I just, I was like, well, this one's a Best Picture nominee, and I can't wait to see it. So, I finally saw it, and just like from the beginning with just the music in this film, I think it's just used so well. Just like the boys, when it first starts, and just like this like electronic feel, and just a lot of the music in this had that feel. And I'm a sucker for great music in like a movie, not necessarily score, but soundtrack a lot. And I feel like that was really well used. And like there's so many like shots in this movie that were kind of framed in such a great way. Like it almost there's one shot where because Cassie works in a coffee shop, a cafe, and she's sitting right in front of this like blue circle behind her. It almost frames her as like the saint of like revenge, like women scorned or something. And it's like even like a blue like kind of halo, and she's wearing pink. And I'm like kind of like the boy and girl color. And she the way she goes through a lot of the first part of the movie where she's and she doesn't really stop this until the very end with the bachelor party. But she keeps going to these different people, and I explained the opening scene to basically see the different types of guys who all claim to be nice guys, and they're good and they're nice. But then when they get like a girl back to their apartment who may be like too drunk, then they might start to take advantage. And like you see all these different types of guys, and it's really interesting too, because I took a note. The male actors were chosen based upon their previously played good guy characters to reinforce the idea that predators can be anyone. Yeah. And then you see so many of these people from Cassie's past, like Alison Brie's character, who she meets with, and she gets her drunk and she drinks ginger ale, and then she's basically talking to her, and she's like, it's not even that big of a deal, like things happen at parties and stuff like that, and basically all the excuses in the book for why what happened wasn't a problem. Yeah. And, then you have Connie Britton's character, who in Friday Night Lights, she's one of the best characters I know. And, she goes and she plays a similar role in this, except the complete opposite, where she's super problematic as the dean of her college, where she's like, oh, what am I going to do? Ruin all these guys' lives?
So you don't remember the accusations made against Al Monroe?
I don't.
She's purposely negligent. Yeah.
Yeah. She's like, I get like one to two of these accusations a week. What am I supposed to do? Like vet every single one of them? And then you wonder why. And then she, because Cassie's like threatening to have dropped her daughter off at like some frat house or something, she calls Cassie a sociopath, and that may be, but isn't she also a sociopath if she's just excusing all this shit?
I think a lot of the messaging is like, they keep saying like, oh, you're so evil, you're a sociopath and all this stuff, but it's like kind of like, look at the mirror, like am I any worse than you are?
What do I do for a living? Sorry, maybe that one's too hard. How old am I?
And again, I really liked that stuff. I think that is important to like know how people who don't think who are bystanders and how they talk about rape and that kind of stuff. I think that is important. Yeah, what are your thoughts on the ending and the decisions they made to then have, the cops show up and trusting a text to get all the justice done?
So sitting there, not knowing what was going to happen, I knew that people were like, "Oh, it's kind of divisive and things happen and stuff," and I didn't know what the hell was going to happen. But I love the imagery of her dressing in the colorful costume, nurse costume, and the colorful hair, and then she's walking there, and then you get the beautiful strings version of "Toxic" by Britney Spears.
Yeah, that's a good choice for sound.
Yeah. And she ends up there, she gets all of them drunk, and then she takes them up, and she's basically talking to him, and he's like, "Oh no, we don't have to do all this. I'm not going to cheat on my wife or my future wife, and I'm not, whatever." And he's like, "I'm a nice guy." And she's like, "Honestly, nice guys are the worst." Basically, she reveals everything that's actually going on, that she's going to end up carving Nina into him because no one speaks her name, but everyone's speaking his name, and justice just hasn't been served. And so then he basically strangles her with the pillow or whatever for like 2 minutes, like two real minutes in the yeah, that's what I meant.
And they linger the shot on it, and it is a deeply effective shot. What do you think the overall message is, though? What do you think they want you to? I think that was probably my issue with the ending. Is what is the overall message? Because obviously there are messages throughout to show how you should speak about victims and how you should approach scenarios that is already established earlier on. But what is the ending trying to tell, aside from the fact that if you go after the people who hurt you, you will get hurt, but justice will still be served anyway.
Well,
it felt weird.
Well, it's kind of almost like how you can't. Some people have so much trauma they can't escape it, so it's almost like a defeat. Like she's like an archetype for people who will never get over something like that. Like some people can just move on in their lives, even the people who perpetrated it, the people like Ryan who saw the thing happen, and they're just like, "Oh, we were young, we didn't know any better," and someone's dead, no one will ever speak her name again. But some people will never be able to get over that. And so I just feel like that's kind of yeah, exactly. And and it goes to somehow she starts to realize a lot of the times, when she smashes that dude's car up, that she can't, she knows what she's doing is a problem. It's problematic in itself, and she's being a problematic person. But then, when she gets killed, I don't know. I mean, I don't think the movie should have just ended with her dying, because I thought it was probably going to just end there, and I was like, this movie just cannot end here, or this would be the craziest, worst thing ever.
Yeah. And then you have the conversation the next day also with Max Greenfield's character, where she tells him it's not your fault, it's okay. And I thought that scene was so impactful, because it's I honestly think if the victim had walked away after that conversation where he's like, it's not your fault, it's okay, and the whole thing is that it still goes on, and they don't get justice. I mean, that is where I thought they were going to go with it too. That conversation is where you're like, oh wow, yeah, this is really she is dead, and he's still trying to find a way to be like, no, it's not your fault. That for me was also a pretty impactful.
Yeah. And a lot of it too, because we're kind of painting this movie as this depressing thing. A lot of the movie's funny, and I feel like making a funny movie out of like a rape story is really insane, but also great, because it's the subject matter is tough to tackle, but if you can do it in kind of a comedic way, and because when he goes to comfort his friend, and he's hugging him, and he's like, "It's gonna be okay, man," and he's like, "Oh, what'd you kill? You killed the stripper under your bachelor party? What is this, the 90s?" So you have certain moments like that, are actually really comedic. And I feel like the very end, where with Angel in the Morning playing, and everybody getting kind of their comeuppance with the things that happened in the past, and her the Nina's kind of vindication there, and I feel like it's a really good way to end it for me. I never really thought about the wink that much, to be honest, but
it just kind of felt like there's a time and a place for the comedy, and I think it just felt weird that it was such that dark ending, and then there's also oh, we're gonna end on a big twist high note. I think the twist was the fact that she did not get her satisfaction. That could have been enough of a twist, and to see these guys go off free would have been hard to watch, but I think it honestly would have kind of hammered home the fact that like people still aren't doing much about it. But then I don't know, it was just weird.
But I don't think the text and everything betrays that, because it does give you a good feeling at the end. But I mean, look, like, you know, you saw like people like Ryan, you know, kind of get away with it. She didn't tell anybody about him, did she? So it's kind of like, you know, the main guy who did it, she got revenge on, and then everybody else kind of, you know, has to see what happened to him as like a cautionary tale, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of the way they built it up too. It was like she was going through this growth, and like then to like kind of pull the rug out under us and be like, no, she really hasn't. And I get what you're saying. Like it's almost where she kind of can't move past it, no matter what. Right. She still can't let go of it. But then like they were setting it up to have this like cathartic, you know, Pulp Fiction, like big bloody death scene where she can kill the predator. And I almost like I get what Emerald Fennell was trying to do and subverting that and being like, no, they don't always win. But I think when talking about a rape story that's so sensitive already, and it already has so much like humor in it that is keeping it kind of like a fun, almost blockbuster like feel to it, then to have that moment not end with her getting her comeuppance there herself, I think that's kind of where it lost me, where I was just like, I get the point of what they're trying to say, but it still kind of it was icky to watch. I was like, I just felt so let down. I was like, wow, like they really built this up and now they just kind of pulled the rug out from under us. And sometimes it works, and for me it just personally didn't. I felt like they pulled the rug out, and I just felt icky and gross after. And you're supposed to feel icky and gross, but again, like I just feel like, I don't know, it just, the ending for me just kind of soiled the rest of it. But again, like you said, it is well made. The soundtrack usage is great. The costumes, the overall aesthetic is really, really cool. And again, that dark humor, when it is good and when it works and when it's right, it really works well. So I do think it has merits. I'm not on that half-star Letterboxd where a lot of people are, and a very vocal amount of people are, and I'm not 5-star either. I'm not praising it. I'm in the middle. You know, I think Carey Mulligan's amazing. I think the cast is amazing. I mean, when you rattled off that cast, I was like, wow. What a cast. And I was just gonna say, I guess this is just one where it's so cool because it is divisive, and it divisive, and it inspires conversation about the topic, and that's what good movies do, or in my opinion, great movies do, and we might just have to agree to disagree on the ending. I think the ending, you know, we both have different thoughts on it. I don't think it ruins the movie, but it does make it less impactful to me, and I do think the most important thing I think this movie stems is the conversation. It's important to have that conversation. So Promising Young Woman was nominated for only 5 awards, and won 1. It was nominated for Picture, Director, Best Actress for Carey Mulligan, of course, and Best Editing, and it won Best Original Screenplay. Again, like the writing, I thought, at least in the first 2/3, you know, the writing's really good, and it's great that a female screenwriter was getting recognized as well, Emerald Fennell. So there you go. So Promising Young Woman, like we said, great conversations to come from it. Conversations all done through speaking. But now let's switch from speaking to hearing. Let's go to Sound of Metal. Chad, take it away.
All right. Sound of Metal, written and directed by Darius Martyr, also written by Abraham Martyr, his brother. Cinematography by Daniel Bouquet. Music by Abraham Martyr and Nicholas Becker. I think that's the sound guy. Sound of Metal is a drama devised by Derek Cianfrance for a project called Metalhead. The project was never finished, and Darius took over writing the screenplay with his brother. Stars Riz Ahmed, Olivia Cook, Paul Raci, Lauren Ridloff, and Matthew Amalric. Not a lot of people in this. Plot. A heavy metal drummer loses his hearing and learns to cope with his new way of life, and with the help of a rural shelter for deaf recovering addicts.
A beautiful film. Just really, again, with that line of empathy, it's so empathetic, and I think all that stems from the sound design, which it won for. The sound is brilliant in this film. Watch it with headphones if you haven't, because it's really cool. Just getting to really not just see what's going on, but feel it through the sound. You feel everything he's going through, and the use of when to put subtitles versus when not to, because they want to let you feel like you're on the outside as well in the beginning. I mean, this movie, a lot of, you know, there's not a lot of like deep analysis to do, except for just that it fucking rocks. For me, at least. I just think it rocks. It's just a great movie.
Yeah, so basically, you know, you're in this with them, with Ruben and his girlfriend, and they're on the road performing.
Lucy, right? that her?
I didn't write it down.
Let me
I
look
think
it up
so.
really quick.
Yeah, so they're on the road performing like heavy metal type music.
Oh,
He's the
Lou,
drummer.
yeah.
Lou,
Louise.
that's right.
Lou.
Yep. She's singing, and it's just kind of like weird type music. It's not my style, but you know, when they're yeah, well, they're doing their thing, and then all of a sudden they're getting ready for like they're prepping the merch and stuff like that for their tour, and all of a sudden the sound drops out. And you're like, you start to get disoriented, and that kind of like puts you in his shoes where he's disoriented. He's like, wait, what's going on? He's like,
Right.
you know, trying to clear his ear and just try to figure this out. He ends up going to the, you know, hearing doctor, and he's, you know, trying to say things, and you can barely make out what he's saying because you're hearing everything like he's hearing it basically. And it kind of makes you feel like you're deaf. And it's one of the kind of things that I love about this movie is like, you know, before this, unless you're deaf, you don't know what it feels like to be deaf. And like this movie, like I haven't tried the headphone thing, but I really want to now because like that would be like really immersive to kind of put you in his shoes to discover like the fear and anxiety of just like suddenly, I mean, this guy is a heavy metal drummer. So like his ears is everything to him, you know, not, you know, he has to like experience like a whole new way of life now. He can't drum anymore. He has to experience everything new again. And, you know, and then he transitions to living with this family basically of this deaf colony. And Paul Raci plays his kind of mentor. And he does it so great. And he's not even like really an actor. Like he's just kind of got to start now, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, he's done like smaller things. He's never been like a big time actor. He's never really broken into the limelight. He has done smaller parts here and there, but he also works, I think, a day job. And I think that was in his Indie Spirit Award speech. He says, "Don't quit your day job, kids, because you never know when your break will come." Actors, you know, Samuel L. Jackson didn't get his start till his 40s. You know, like a lot of actors don't get their start till further on. I think Paul Raci is going to get a lot more work after this. I'll tell you, especially because we are seeing now more movies utilizing disability as a positive and using, you know, actors with disability to portray characters with disability, and not necessarily in a negative sense. The whole point of the movie is to say hearing this deafness is not a handicap. It's not a disability. It's not something meant to be feared, not something meant to be fixed.
Everybody here shares in the belief that being deaf is not a handicap, not something to fix.
And that is so beautiful, and that's why Paul Raci is so great, is because his character has such a great philosophy about it. Just
and with that, it's kind of interesting because that plays into the story, because like Ruben has to try to discover this for himself, and he discovers it the hard way because, you know, his new life kind of without Lou, she kind of leaves and goes to do her own thing, like a solo kind of project. And he's here having to, you know, and he's pissed off at first. Like he goes to meet with these like deaf kids and into this classroom where he can learn some stuff. He writes his name real big, and he's kind of an asshole a little bit. And, you know, he's like, because he's so frustrated with the way, you know, he bangs the shit out of a donut, which apparently Riz said that he doesn't like donuts. So that's why he smashed the donut or something. Cool. It was like kind of like an ad lib choice that he did, improv choice and stuff. So, but basically like he ends up losing the colony because he kind of betrays Paul Raci's character in the movie when he goes to get a cochlear implant, because these types of communities are like you said, it's not something to fix. So by getting that, you know, it kind of betrays everything that they believe in, that deafness is not a disability.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful turning point, because you see like a lot of movies, it's almost like Promising Young Woman, where like they have so much growth, but then at the end it's like, no, but they don't yet. They're still, their old selves kind of creep back in, and they have to have this sense of, for her it's the sense of revenge, and for him it's a sense of like, no, I need the hearing. But I think it's once he gets those implants, then he starts to see the light. But I like how it doesn't end with him going back to the colony, because, you know, the colony stands by what it believes in, and you betrayed it. You have to do the work now on your own. And I think it's impactful that he then goes to the next thing, which is Lou. And when he's with Lou, that's when it all starts to click, that he almost not wants to, but he's accepted that he has to now live this life where he has to learn how to be deaf. You know, Paul Raci, Joe literally writes it on the board, learn how to be deaf. And I think he finally comes to terms with that, especially that last sequence. It is so simple, but that moment of him just looking around, looking at everything and hearing it, but hearing it in a way that, like, is it better to hear things that aren't meant to sound that way and hear them in such a distorted way, or is it better to just not hear it at all? And he finds peace in just taking them off, taking the implants off and just sitting there and taking it in. And it's really beautiful to just be able to finally come to that point. I think this movie, if it had been made maybe by a bigger production company, a bigger studio, they might have added an extra half hour at the end where he takes it off and then he goes back to the colony or he goes somewhere and he like makes a success out of himself. But I think ending it there, this is now kind of his climax, his personal climax of him finally reaching that point of, I need to do this. I need to take him off and I need to learn how to be deaf. But that's where we end it. I think it's such a beautiful and a major props to them for deciding to end it there, because it really then makes you think, well, maybe he isn't fully changed, but now he is at least acknowledged that he needs to. I think it's just really beautiful.
Yeah, because you can kind of see his disappointment as soon as he gets the thing. He's like, she's like, how does it sound? And he's like, bad. Basically discovering like this new hope of cochlear implants that's going to change his life, make him hear again. He's going to get back on the road with Lou, and they're going to be drumming and just doing this thing that all their plans that they had, living in the van, which is their home. He sold that, and, is he going to get it back? Probably not. And, so he ends up going back, and then he hears her singing with her dad, and that even sounds super distorted. And so it's just like, all these things just add up to his life is never going to be like how it was. And he needs to learn how to be deaf and just find that sense of stillness like Paul Raci tells him to do. And that's why he has him, writing in his journal and stuff like that. And he's just like, find out how to be able to sit and just be still and just, find your new life as like a deaf person.
Because drumming, you're nonstop going. You're moving 100%. And that's him. That's Ruben. And then at the end, for him to sit on the bench and just take it off, I mean, it's gorgeous. And we've talked so much about it. It's just so beautiful. So,
I did want to note a couple things, because there's the way they did the sound in this. There is a Cinefix video I watched, which is really great, which talks about like they used the way they did sound in different microphone techniques is basically they treated it like how cinematographers use different lenses and stuff to get different shots. They used sound the same way with different microphones. They put one in Riz's mouth, and they did a lot of these different techniques. And they just had like after shooting, the sound guy would take Riz and just have him for an extended period of time to do different sound stuff. They also but also Darius spent like 13 years prior to casting vetting actors who would be just as committed to the work as him. So this was in development for a while apparently. And then also for 8 months, Riz Ahmed prepared for the film by spending 2 hours a day learning American Sign Language, 2 hours a day learning how to play the drums, and then 2 hours a day working with the personal training, and then the rest of the time using with his acting coach. And then the film was also shot in 24 non-consecutive days, and no more than 2 takes per scene were shot. Crazy. Professional as hell, right?
It's so professional. And the work ethic is just incredible. And that's, again, like I was saying with Nomadland, you don't need to know the behind-the-scenes stuff to appreciate the movie, but it only enhances your appreciation more.
Exactly.
And again, it was nominated for 6. It won 2. It was nominated for Picture Actor for Riz Ahmed, Best Original Screenplay, Best Supporting Actor for Paul Raci, but it won in Best Editing and Best Sound. And that Best Sound award, if you had to give me one win that was my favorite of the night, it was that. Because he got to present it to the movie himself. Riz Ahmed presented it, the award for Best Sound, and it is just the most deserving. It's an award that's completely merit-based, not precursor-based. It wasn't one of those things where you have to look at every award show and see, oh, who's won sound. It's just, it's known. It's just Sound Metal won. It's known from the start.
Right.
It was. No one could dispute it. And as good as Mank's sound design is, this is the most intricate sound design I've ever heard. And it makes me interested to look at sound design in other movies now. Yeah.
Yeah, Mank was just unfortunate there.
Speaking of sound, the sound of a gavel is taking us to our next and last movie, and that is The Trial of the Chicago 7. This is the last movie we're talking about. I know we've been talking for a while, but 8 movies, we got a lot to cover. So we can talk about this a little bit briefly because this is the one that didn't win any awards, but we still want to give it its due. So Chad, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah. The Trial of Chicago 7, directed and written by Aaron Sorkin, cinematography by Pheidon Pepamichael, Music by Daniel Pemberton. The Trial of the Chicago Seven is a historical legal drama that was written in 2007 with the idea of Steven Spielberg directing. Spielberg dropped out due to the 2007 Writers Guild of America strike and budget concerns.
Wow.
Stars were Eddie Redmayne, Sacha Baron Cohen, Alex Sharp, Jeremy Strong, John Carroll Lynch, Noah Robbins, Daniel Flaherty, Yahya Abdul Mateen II, Mark Rylance, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Ben Shankman, J.C. McKenzie, Franklin Langella, Kelvin Harrison Jr., Michael Keaton, John Dorman, and some others. The plot: the Chicago Seven is a group of anti-Vietnam War protesters who were charged with conspiracy to incite riots at the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago.
Yeah. So again, it's the trial. That's the basic summary of the movie. It's a trial, and I think the reason we don't have as much to say about this movie is because, as good as it is, and it's a good movie, it's watchable. It's definitely rewatchable. Like, it's something you can watch easily. It's easy to digest because it's just a courtroom drama, and it's a good courtroom drama. But again, when you have movies like Sound of Metal and Nomadland and The Father, even like movies that just seem like something you've never seen before, when a movie comes around that's just like, you know, courtroom drama, and it's a good courtroom drama, it carries a little less weight. And this is kind of what you think of when you think of Oscar bait. It's a movie that is written by a prestige person, Aaron Sorkin, who's awarded a lot in the Golden Globes, a little bit in the Oscars. You know, they like him. You know, it's a courtroom drama. You know, it's set in like one location. There's a few flashbacks. There's a few other side conversations. It's very wordy. It's very dialogue heavy. It's good. It's very good. And the thing is, it's entertaining. But again, it doesn't do necessarily anything new with the genre or the style of a courtroom drama. And I do think the reason why it got so much acclaim is this cast, because this cast is awesome. This is probably next to Minari, probably my favorite cast of the year. It's just so stacked. It's one of those quantity over quality things. I think quality, when the Minari cast just has such a good gel to it, but quantity, this is it. You have basically an actor from every single area you can imagine. You've got Eddie Redmayne, who just won an Oscar a few years ago. Michael Keaton, who lost the Oscar to Eddie Redmayne a few years ago, but has also been nominated for a bunch. You've got Sacha Baron Cohen, who is blowing up not just for his comedy, but for his drama. You have, John Carroll Lynch, who was in Fargo. You know, he's great in Fargo. You have Frank Langella, who is a legend, who is an esteemed legend. Yahya Abdul Mateen, who was just in the biggest miniseries to blow up the Emmys in the past few years with Watchmen. Like, this is a great cast. Mark Rylance won an Oscar recently. Joseph Gordon-Levitt is always on the radar. Like, this is such a good cast. And I think that's where the strengths of this movie come, are not necessarily even in the dialogue, but the way the actors bring themselves to the piece. What are your thoughts, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw this, I liked this movie. I didn't like super love it or anything. I mean, yeah, I like courtroom movies quite a bit. Some of my favorite, I love A Few Good Men. Things like that are fantastic. Exactly, yeah. But I think, whereas this one is just kind of a paint by numbers a little bit with this movie. It does bring a lot of comedy into it, which I thought was great. Sacha Baron Cohen's character is actually kind of a comedian. So in the courtroom, they're pulling stunts. They're dressing like cops and lawyers, and they take off their robes and they take them off, and they're cops underneath, and it's there's some comedy in there, which is great, but I just feel like it is a little paint by numbers, and
it's very funny, and it makes sense why Sacha Baron Cohen's the one they awarded, or at least gave a nomination to. It's because he's the one who has a lot of the memorable lines. My favorite line in the movie is "I'm sorry, will you give me a moment, friend? I've never been on trial for my thoughts before."
I'm concerned you have to think about it.
Give me a moment, would you, friend? I've never been on trial for my thoughts before.
Like, that line's really good, and Aaron Sorkin's just a great writer, so you have those quips that are really, really good. I think the problem comes from Aaron Sorkin just not being the best director. I think he has great words, but then I think he always needs someone to translate them. Social Network, great example of such a great wordy script that David Fincher knew exactly how to use to make something new. And I think, again, like, his style isn't anything new. And I think that's even what separates this from, like, a Mank, where Mank may not be as entertaining, but Mank at least has the style and just does something so new with the style that you're at least intrigued, even though this is, I'd say, a little bit more entertaining than Mank. Again, entertaining, but, paid by numbers.
Yeah. I mean, I just watched this again today, and, the first time I was like, oh, okay. I like the comedy in it, but upon rewatch, I'm like, it's not very rewatchable. Okay. It's, I like Mark Rylance has a good voice. I like listening to him.
The other defendants would like to join in Mr. Seal's motion.
Frank Langella plays an infuriating judge in this movie.
Will you be quiet? You have lawyers to speak for you.
Basically, the whole movie you're spending hating Frank Langella's character.
And I think that's a testament to his performance too. Like he plays that role so well. Yeah.
But I mean, it just didn't really seem anything that special. It's not that relevant to the time. It's a period piece, so it's just, like you were saying, stacked against so many other movies that do seem relevant, like A Promising Young Woman, Sound of Music, Nomadland. A lot of these movies just are so, relevant and stuff to the times. I feel like this one just kind of got lost in the, shuffle.
Yeah, definitely. And I know, spoiler alert, like it's not the lowest on my ranking. Like I still think it is, for me, more entertaining than some of these movies. And at least like I can watch it through and not feel a certain negative way about it. Like I watch it and I'm like, that was good. But again, like good is not necessarily what the Academy, just goes for or like wants to go for. Well, say they go for, they end up doing it anyway, because it's nominated. But for it to get 0 wins and be this Oscar bait, I think it really did show a tide shifting for this Academy and the certain movies they do or do not award now, opposed to 10 years ago. I think 10 years ago, this wins all 6 nominations it's up for. I do. Even against these films, I think 10 years ago, it wins. This or Mank, because that's just what Oscar bait is. But now you see movies that are unconventional. Some movies that I don't even love that are still unconventional enough that at least have something new to say. So that's Trial. 6 nominations: Best Picture, Editing, Cinematography, Original Screenplay, Original Song, Hear My Voice, and Best Supporting Actor for Sacha Baron Cohen. I argue it's his second best performance of the year next to Borat. I don't even think it's his best performance of the year. But those are our 8. So it's been a while, but we made it through all 8. So now what we do is we have to basically rank them, which we already have. So you're not gonna have to have us. You're not gonna have to watch us go through that. And we're just gonna kind of go through our rankings. Again, these are our personal rankings. We're not gonna get mad at one another. We may give each other some hard stares, but I really think each ranking. I'm going to be respectful of yours. You're going to be respectful of mine. We're going to rank them. And if we have disagreements, we have disagreements. And we can explain our rankings at the end. Sure. Chad, why don't you start us off with your number 8?
My number 8 is going to be The Trial of the Chicago 7. It is my last. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
My 8, again, you might get a little upset about this, but I put Promising Young Woman at 8. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I just, the ending for me just doesn't really, it kind of sours the rest of it for me.
Opinions are opinions.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
My number 7 is actually Mank.
My 7 is also Mank.
Okay. My 6 is The Father.
Wow. Okay. My 6 is The Trial of Chicago 7.
Okay. My 5 is Judas and the Black Messiah.
All right. My 5 is The Father.
Okay. My 4 is Minari.
My 4 is also Minari.
Okay. My 3 is Nomadland.
My 3 is Judas and the Black Messiah.
My 2, or do you want to just go with 1?
No, go for your 2.
Well, okay, they'll spoil 1, but my 2 is Sound of Metal.
Oh, wow, okay. My 2 is also Sound of Metal, which means
my
your 1.
Promising Young Woman.
Interesting, and my 1 is Nomadland. So there we go. My number 8 is your number 1. Again, I think that speaks to Promising Young Woman, though, as a whole, is that a lot of people are high on it, a lot of people are low on it. I was with it until that ending. Something about that third act just seemed a little tonally, something went wrong there for me. But again, it's your opinion, and that's a great, I'm happy you like it more than I do. I'm glad you like it, because I want people to like every movie here. Yeah, otherwise, my ranking, that was at the bottom. Mank and Trial are kind of interchangeable, but I do think Trial at least is more entertaining to me than Mank. And then The Father, it's not in the top 4 just because, I think I don't want to watch it again, ever, just because it's so sad and so depressing. 4 is Minari, kind of the same reasons. It is slower, so I don't find myself wanting to rewatch it as much, but I did think it's beautiful. 3 is Judas and the Black Messiah, just because I do think it is so timely and so powerful, and every time I watch it, I've just loved it more and more. It's actually the one that was probably at number 6 and grew after every rewatch, which I thought was impressive. And then 2, Sound of Metal, brilliant film, but 1 is Nomadland. It's the one that spoke to me the most.
Yeah, so for me, I'm kind of in a similar boat. Trial of Chicago 7 and Mank are a little interchangeable, but then after watching Trial of Chicago 7 again, I'm like, I think just Mank was too inventive to really be below Trial for me. The Father was really great, but I thought all the other ones were more enjoyable. Judas and the Black Messiah. I don't know. I mean, I need to a lot of these. So Dill's watched a lot of these multiple times. I've only seen Judas and the Black Messiah once because availability just wasn't there. So, basically, I want to rewatch it. But I feel like the performances were probably, better than the movie overall, maybe.
Yeah.
And then Minari is a super solid movie. I really liked Minari a lot, but I just enjoyed the other three more, I think.
Yeah, and that's totally fair.
And I think Nomadland is 3 for me because it is that slow movie. Not a ton happens, and I just feel like the other 2 were better for me. Sound of Metal. If I hadn't enjoyed Promising Young Woman so much, I think I would have put Sound of Metal 1 because it is this like near perfect movie that just feels like everything's in its place. And I don't know, just Promising Young Woman for me, just like everything just seems so edgy. All the music just hit for me. There's just the one part, where she's walking, she's just distraught by Ryan and everything that's happening, and they just play like this really cool music. I don't know, it's just everything hit for me in that movie. It was hilarious, it was sad, it was dark.
Yeah. And again, I was trying when I rewatched it. I was trying so much to like it more, and I did like it more. I think that I did like it. I think if you had me rank it the first time, I would be even lower on it, but which I can't because it's 8 already. But I think on this rewatch, I liked those first 2/3 so much that at the end, I just felt like it's honestly one of those things where like I get what they were going for, but I just didn't find satisfaction, and that's just what happens with some movies, especially movies as provocative and as divisive as that. So here's another conundrum we're in, Chad, because. I added up the scores because I have Nomadland at 1 and you have it at 3. That gives it a total score of 4. And because we both have Sound of Metal, that gives that a common score of 4. So they're tied for our best. So we are going to flip a coin, and basically what happens is if it's we'll call it, and whoever the coin flips, if it's me, it'll be Nomadland. If it's you, it'll be Sound of Metal. Is that good?
Sure.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, that's the way it stacks up. All right. Do you want heads or tails, Chad? I'll let you call
Tails.
It.
Tails.
Right. Siri, flip a coin. Sorry about that, Chad.
It's all right. I won last time.
Right. So both of these shows, 1994 and 2020, we have had ties, basically, just the way our lists worked out. I will say, though, if I had put Judas any higher and Sound of Metal any lower, then it would have been Nomadland anyway. So, and I was close to doing that anyway. But I do think Nomadland wins our picture this year. It won the Oscar, but again, it was 3 on your list, 1 on mine. So I mean, it was one of our number ones, and it was only tied with Sound of Metal just because we both had it at 2. But that is our best picture for the year is Nomadland. Now let's award our performances, Chad. Who is your best actor of these 8 movies? Now let me just reiterate to everyone, this is from these 8 movies. So unfortunately, as much as we both love Chadwick Boseman's performance, he is not eligible because Ma Rainey wasn't nominated. For this show specifically, we are only awarding performances from these 8 movies. So Chad, who is your actor? Because I went first for actor last time.
My actor is Riz Ahmed.
Great. Okay, cool. And what is your Oscar scene for that?
Well, I loved Riz as Ruben in this movie, and I had kind of generally 2, but one specific.
Great.
I loved when he has the discussion with Paul Raci. After he gets his cochlear implant, he goes and he sits down with him, and he's super desperate. He had just sold his van, and he's like, I need some money to get my van back. It's my home. I need to get Lou back. I want to get the band back together. Basically, is what he's trying to do, I guess, and just kind of like get his life back together. And he has this whole thing, and then it just kind of coupled with maybe another choice on another day, Paul Raci. Who is so good in the movie, just like the scene between them is just like 2 almost like seeming like veteran actors, but they're not. Going back and forth, and just like it's Ruben with his desperation, and then Paul with his regretfully I have to send this guy away, and he's just like every time he goes pause, Ruben, and then he has to continue that with some sort of like way to tell him. You can't stay here. Not only I don't know how you got yourself into this situation, but not only am I not giving you any money, but you have to get the fuck out of here. So, and then I also loved a lot of the scenes when he's like teaching kids about music and trying to rediscover music himself. When it's like so banging on the slide, and then like feeling the piano to kind of listen to the vibrations, because that's how deaf people experience music.
Yep. Alrighty. So my best actor, I've been toying with 3, and you didn't pick any of my 3, so now I'm like, oh boy. I'll say the two I didn't pick. One was Paul Raci, and for the same scene
Okay.
you mentioned. One was Anthony Hopkins, the eventual winner. But my pick is Mr. Daniel Kaluuya for Judas and the Black Messiah. It is a career-defining performance, I think, and that's hard to top because Widows and Get Out are both phenomenal performances of his.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
this is his performance of a lifetime. My scene I picked was the "I Am a Revolutionary" speech.
I am a revolutionary. I am a revolutionary.
He commands that whole scene. The whole speech, because you also have the extra layer of Lakeith Stanfield and Jesse Plemons' characters meeting eye contact, but that whole scene is driven by his energy. It's right when he's released from jail and he has that whole speech.
Hey, I'm high of the people. I'm high.
But yeah, it's really amazing. It is my favorite performance of this whole Best Picture bunch. Maybe
That's
only
a great one.
maybe only second of the year next to Chadwick, who was not even eligible because of the nominees. So I went with Daniel Kaluuya. So now my best actress, because I get to go first for this, it's Frances McDormand for Nomadland.
Of course.
You knew it was coming. The thing with Frances is she doesn't have one scene to me that sticks out. It's almost just this whole body of work. But if I had to pick one scene, it is that one with Bob Wells at the end, where she says, what's remembered lives.
It's like my dad used to say, what's remembered lives.
And that's really, really powerful. And I think paired with Bob Wells' speech after that about his son, I mean, it's just a beautiful moment.
I can look down the road and I can be certain in my heart that I'll see my son again.
A great conclusion, a great satisfying ending to that story before she eventually goes back to Empire by herself.
I maybe spent too much of my life just remembering.
Who is your pick for Best Actress, Chad?
Well, in contrast to your pick, I picked Carey Mulligan.
Yep. That was my backup. That was my backup. So
yeah, I mean, just like because she, she shows all of this kind of, because she shows so much range in this role where she goes from this, focused. I'm gonna get these guys. I'm gonna show them, and then she shows like a lot of weakness too, where she's like, trying to cope with everything that's happened to her, what she wants to do and her plan and everything. The one scene that I really loved, and both times I watched it, was the dance sequence in the pharmacy between Cassie and Ryan. Because this movie's so hilarious. I love Bo Burnham in this movie too, because just like they play off, and it's not just them in the convenience store. It's like a montage with this song of them falling in love, and he's popping the chips, and then like feeding them to each other and stuff like that, and just like just falling in love, and you see that she has hope for the world and wants to be there with him and fall in love and just have hope that some people are good people, and just unfortunately her character gets betrayed by that. And I just feel like she shows that betrayal so well, and just every other thing in this movie, she just like crushes this performance for me. I loved it.
Yeah, she's great. This is one of her career best too. Probably my second favorite performance of hers of all time, next to Shame. I mean, she is so good in this.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, really good. If you're a Steve McQueen fan, Small Axe, go check it out. All right, so that is it. Our best picture, when we combined the two totals, was my number one, his number three, Nomadland, and the best picture choice, the best actor choices for Chad, it was Riz Ahmed for Sound of Metal. For me, it was Daniel Kaluuya for Judas and the Black Messiah. For best actress, for Chad, it was Carey Mulligan for Promising Young Woman, and for me, it was Frances McDormand for Nomadland. And now we are going to be teasing next month's movies, as if we haven't talked long enough. We decided, because we had so many movies to talk about this year, and we thought, what, with them going to 10 nominations next year, and we've been in a lot of years with 8 to 10 nominations, 7, 8, 9, whatever. Originally, they used to do 10 nominations or 12 nominations, but then they eventually tightened it down to 5. We wanted to go back to a year of 5, a lighter load next month, and we figured, when was the first year they decided to go with 5 nominees and keep it consistent until 2008? 2009, I should say, 2009. And we found out the first year they did that was 1944. So we decided, this would be a great way to go back to some classic movies, and then just see what the Oscars were about back then, when they decided to say, hey, we're going to do 5 movies from now on, and that would later change in 2009. So the movies in discussion: Double Indemnity, Gaslight, Going My Way, Since You Went Away, and Wilson. So Going My Way won Best Picture, and the other 4 have been talked about. 2 of them, I believe, are very, very popular. Double Indemnity and Gaslight have been talked about a lot of places. So it'll be really interesting to talk about these 5 movies because I've seen none of them. I assume you haven't either.
No, I haven't. Yeah. So yeah, it's great to because we've been in 1994, 2020. We were well, I was alive during both of these years, and so now we get to go back where neither of us were alive, and experience some of the classics, and I think that's great.
Yeah. All right. So once again, 1944 movies in 1944. You can find them everywhere. I mean, it is hard some of them to find, but you will eventually be able to find them everywhere if you want to watch along, or if you want to watch 1 or 2 and then tune in next time. We will put time codes on the bottom so you can follow along the show and skip the parts you want to skip. But please, if you enjoy these videos, please like, subscribe, comment. Please, we want to keep this video in the algorithm. It is long, so people are going to see it and say, I don't know if I want to watch a 2-hour video. But no, these are split up in time codes so you can skip around to the movies you want to hear about and skip the ones you don't. But please keep us in the algorithm. Keep liking, keep commenting. Likes and comments get it seen by multiple people. And share it with your friends if you like it. Chad, where can they find you?
Oh yeah, you can find me. I usually do Letterboxd stuff. Chadwick_Webb. I'm sometimes on Twitter. I'm not that frequent. I do a lot of trivia on online. So YouTube. I do a lot of trivia on there. And that's about it.
Yeah, you can find me at Dylan_Randazzo on Twitter and, of course, on Letterboxd, where you can hear some of my more eloquently put together thoughts. Because here I'm just kind of rambling, but you can see my real reviews for some of these movies. All 8 of these movies, I rewatched them over the past 2 weeks. And you can, of course, find me here at the Dyl Pickle Movie Network. As I said earlier, I have a video about my initial reactions to the Oscars, as well as my predictions beforehand, which weren't so hot. And then a bunch of other videos coming to the channel and that have been coming to the channel the past few months. It's been really fun to see this channel grow. Picture this is one of my favorite things to do every month. And I'm so excited to be talking 1944. We're going back in time next time. So thank you guys so much for watching. Any last words, Chad?
No, thanks.
All right. See you down the road.